She replaced me in a week, 7 days, and I've replayed that number in my head more times than I'd like to admit. Because when something you invested months, maybe years, into gets swapped out in 7 days, it doesn't just hurt, it destabilizes you. It makes you question your perception, it makes you question your value, it makes you question whether what you had was ever real in the first place. I keep thinking about how we ended the conversations, the tone, the way she said she needed time, the way she said she had to focus on herself, and then a week later there's someone else standing where I used to stand. So what was the truth? Was she grieving while I was still loving? Was she detaching while I was trying? Was I the only one still emotionally present toward the end? Because you don't replace someone in a week unless you were already halfway gone. That's the part that keeps echoing in my mind. You don't wake up on Monday heartbroken and by Sunday decide you're ready for someone new. That's not healing, that's transition. And if she transitioned that smoothly, that quickly, then maybe I wasn't as permanent in her world as she was in mine. And that realization stings more than the breakup itself, because breakups hurt. But being replaced fast, that attacks your identity. It makes you feel temporary. It makes you feel interchangeable. It makes you feel like you were just holding a spot until something better came along. And I hate that my mind even goes there. But when someone replaces you in a week, you start asking dangerous questions. Was I not enough? Was I boring? Was I too available? Did she already have him lined up? Was I just comfortable, not essential? And the scary part is, your brain doesn't just ask those questions, it starts believing them. You start comparing yourself to someone you don't even know. You start imagining that he must have something you didn't. More excitement, more dominance, more money, more mystery, more something. And now it feels like you lost a competition you didn't even know you were in. But love was never supposed to be competitive. It was supposed to be intentional, chosen, protected. And if she could swap me out in 7 days, then maybe what we had wasn't as protected as I thought. Maybe I was fighting for something that was already slipping away. Maybe I was loving someone who had already emotionally exited. And that's the part that hurts the most. Not that she found someone new, but that she found someone new that quickly, because that speed tells a story. And I'm still trying to figure out what that story says about me. I think what really messed with me wasn't just that she replaced me, it was how effortless it looked, how natural she made it seem. Like I was just a chapter she flipped past without rereading, because I'm still here sitting with it, still replaying the last conversations in my head, still wondering if I missed signs, still trying to understand where it actually started falling apart, and she's already smiling next to someone new. That kind of speed doesn't just hurt, it humiliates you. It makes you feel like you were the only one emotionally invested at the end. Like while you were trying to fix it, she was already detaching. Like while you were thinking, we just need time, she was thinking, I need someone else. And the scariest part, I don't know which version of reality is true. Was she already talking to him before we ended? Was I slowly being phased out while I was still trying to show up? Or did she just move on that fast because she can't be alone? Every scenario hurts in a different way. If she was already lining him up, then I was loving someone who was preparing my replacement. If she just needed validation that quickly, then I was never the emotional anchor I thought I was. And if she genuinely didn't feel anything after it ended, then maybe I meant less than I believed. That's what a 1-week replacement does to your mind. It makes you question the entire foundation. You start rewriting memories. That time she seemed distant, that time she picked a fight out of nowhere, that time she said she felt confused. Now they don't feel random anymore. Now they feel like early signs of an exit. And the worst part is realizing that you might have been the only one still emotionally inside the relationship toward the end, because you can't replace someone in a week unless you were already halfway gone. And that's the sentence that keeps echoing. Halfway gone. Maybe she left emotionally months ago. Maybe I was loving someone who had already checked out. Maybe the breakup wasn't the beginning of the end. Maybe it was just the announcement, and that realization shifts the pain, because now it's not just heartbreak, it's feeling blindsided, it's feeling like you were operating on outdated information, like you thought you were both building, but she was already packing. And I hate that this makes me question my value, because logically, I know someone moving on fast doesn't define me, but emotionally, it feels like it does. It feels like I was replaceable, interchangeable, temporary, and nobody wants to feel temporary in something they treated as permanent. I keep thinking about how deeply I committed, how I shut down distractions, how I defended her when people doubted us, how I chose her repeatedly. And now it feels like I was the only one guarding something she was willing to trade. That's what makes it feel unfair. Not that she moved on, but that she moved on like it was easy, like I was just space that needed to be filled. And that's the dangerous thought, because I wasn't just space, I was time, I was effort, I was loyalty, I was presence. And if she could replace all of that in 7 days, then either she never fully valued it, or she never fully processed it. And I don't know which one hurts more, because if she didn't value it, then I misjudged everything. And if she didn't process it, then she's just distracting herself. But distraction still feels like replacement when you're the one left behind. And I'm left here trying to rebuild confidence that got shaken by a 7-day timeline, trying to remind myself that speed doesn't equal significance, trying to remember that depth doesn't get erased overnight, because if what we had was real to me, then it was real, even if she replaced it quickly. But still, 7 days. That number doesn't just represent time, it represents how fast someone can move on when you thought you meant more. And I'm still trying to figure out what that says about her and what it doesn't say about me. The part nobody prepares you for is how fast replacement attacks your confidence, not just your feelings, your confidence, because heartbreak hurts your chest, but being replaced quickly hits your ego. And ego isn't pride, ego is identity. It's how you see yourself. And when someone moves on in a week, your brain starts filling in blanks you never wanted to think about. You start comparing yourself to someone you don't even know. What does he have that I don't? Is he more exciting, more unpredictable, more emotionally unavailable, more dominant, more detached? Did she need someone less steady, less serious, less invested? You start dissecting yourself like you were the problem to be solved. And that's dangerous, because now it's not just about her moving on, it's about you feeling like you lost to someone else, like this was a competition, like you were weighed against another option and didn't measure up. But here's the part that doesn't get talked about. If someone can replace you in a week, they didn't replace you. They replaced the role, they replaced the attention, they replaced the space, they replaced the feeling of not being alone. But connection, real connection, that doesn't get swapped that quickly. You can substitute company, you can substitute validation, but you can't duplicate depth overnight. And I have to keep reminding myself of that, because when you see them laughing together, posting together, looking comfortable together, your mind doesn't care about logic. It sees images and it translates them into meaning. They're happier. She upgraded. You weren't enough. But images don't show history. They don't show inside jokes. They don't show late night vulnerability. They don't show how deeply you invested. They show a moment, and moments are easy to manufacture. Depth takes time, and if she replaced me in 7 days, then either she had already emotionally left long before we officially ended, or she doesn't process loss the way I do. And both are hard to accept, because if she left emotionally before I did, then I was loving someone who was already gone. And if she doesn't process loss deeply, then I was loving someone who doesn't sit with pain. She escapes it. And escape looks like replacement when you're the one grieving. I won't lie though. Part of what hurts is feeling disposable. Like I was just a chapter. Like I was just a phase. Like I was someone she needed for that season. And once it was over, I was easy to move past. But here's what I'm starting to understand. People who move on that quickly aren't necessarily healed. They're avoiding, They're filling silence. They're covering discomfort because sitting alone after a breakup is uncomfortable. It forces reflection. It forces accountability. It forces grief. And not everyone has the emotional discipline to sit with that. Some people run straight into the next distraction, not because the previous person meant nothing, but because feeling nothing feels easier than feeling everything. And I need to remember that her timeline isn't a measurement of my worth. It's a reflection of her coping style. Still, that doesn't erase the sting, because I'm still here thinking about what we had. Still processing, still grieving, still reconstructing my confidence, and she's already building something new. That imbalance feels unfair, like I'm stuck in emotional traffic while she sped through the exit ramp, and maybe that's the hardest pill to swallow. Not that she found someone else, but that she found someone else while I'm still untangling myself from what we were. It makes you feel behind, like you're losing, like you're weaker for caring longer, but caring longer isn't weakness, it's depth, and depth doesn't reset in 7 days. So maybe the real truth is this: she replaced the position, but she didn't replace the impact. And if what we had was real to me, then it mattered, even if she chose not to sit in it, even if she chose speed over reflection, because I would rather be the one who feels deeply than the one who forgets quickly. 7 days might look like replacement, but sometimes it's just avoidance in disguise. And one day, when the distraction fades, she might finally sit with what I've been sitting with this whole time, and by then I'll be further ahead emotionally than she ever was, not because I moved on faster, but because I actually processed it. And that's something nobody can replace in a week. The worst part about her replacing me in a week isn't even the new guy, it's the silence that came with it, because when someone moves on that fast, they don't just leave you, they erase you. The calls stop, the inside jokes disappear, the routine you built together vanishes, and suddenly the person who used to know your schedule, your moods, your patterns is giving that attention to someone else. That's what makes it feel unreal, because it's not just that she found someone new, it's that she redirected everything so easily. The same energy, the same time, the same effort, just different face. And that's when your mind spirals into the dangerous place. If she can give someone else what she gave me that quickly, was it ever special? That question hits hard, because we don't just want to be loved, we want to feel irreplaceable. We want to feel like what we built had weight, like it left a mark, like it couldn't just be swapped out like a profile picture. And when she replaced me in 7 days, it felt like I was lightweight, like I was something she could carry easily and set down just as easily. But here's the thing I keep wrestling with. Maybe it wasn't easy. Maybe it just looks easy. Social media never shows grief. It doesn't show reflection. It doesn't show confusion. It shows highlights. And maybe what I'm seeing is the highlight reel of her coping, because moving on quickly doesn't always mean you didn't care. Sometimes it means you can't sit still with pain. Sometimes it means you need distraction to avoid accountability. Sometimes it means you'd rather build something new than examine why the last thing broke. But none of that makes it easier to watch, because while she's building new memories, I'm still dismantling old ones. I'm still processing the last conversation, still remembering the way she used to look at me, still trying to figure out when it started fading. And that imbalance makes you feel like you lost twice. You lost the relationship, and you lost the race to move on. And I hate that it feels like a race, because healing shouldn't be competitive. But when someone replaces you in a week, it feels like you're the only one still standing in the wreckage, like she walked away from the crash without even looking back, and you're still checking for broken pieces. What hurts even more is knowing I didn't have a backup. I didn't have someone lined up. I didn't have a just in case. When we ended, it was just me in the silence, and I chose to sit in it, not because I wanted to suffer, but because I respect what we had enough to process it properly. So when she jumped into something new that fast, it felt like I was the only one honoring the history, like I was the only one treating it like it mattered. And that's a lonely feeling, to believe something was significant and watch the other person treat it like it was temporary. But maybe the truth is simpler. Maybe she didn't replace me. Maybe she replaced the feeling of being alone. Maybe she replaced the discomfort. Maybe she replaced the emptiness, because some people don't know how to sit with themselves after something ends. They need noise. They need attention. They need someone new to prove they're still wanted, and if that's the case, then her moving on in a week says more about her relationship with silence than it does about my value. Still, that doesn't stop the thoughts, because at night, logic fades and emotion gets loud. In those moments, it feels like I wasn't enough. Like if I had been better, stronger, more exciting, more something, she wouldn't have moved on that fast. But I have to remind myself, you can be enough for someone and still not be there forever. You can love someone deeply and still not be what they're built to keep. And if she could replace me in 7 days, then maybe I wasn't meant to stay in her life long term. Maybe I was a lesson. Maybe she was mine. But what I refuse to accept is that I was insignificant, because I know how I loved, I know how I showed up, I know how I committed, and those things don't become meaningless just because someone else moved quickly. If anything, they prove something about me, that I invest fully, that I don't keep backups, that I don't treat people like placeholders. And maybe that's rare. Maybe that's why this hurts more, because I wasn't halfway in. I was all the way in. And when you're all the way in, being replaced feels like being erased, but I'm not erased. I'm just healing at a pace that reflects depth, and depth doesn't reset in 7 days. So yeah, she replaced me in a week, but that week doesn't define my worth. It defines her coping speed. And one day when she finally slows down, she might realize you can replace a person's position, but you can't replace the way they loved you. And that's something no one swaps out in 7 days. There's a different kind of pain that comes from being replaced quickly. It's not just heartbreak, it's humiliation. And I don't mean humiliation in a loud, dramatic way. I mean the quiet kind, the kind where you sit alone thinking, how did I not see this coming? Because when someone moves on in a week, it makes you question your awareness. Were there signs I ignored? Did she emotionally detach months before I noticed? Was I holding on to something that was already slipping through my hands? And that's the part that messes with your head the most. Because now it's not just about losing her. It's about doubting yourself, your intuition, your judgment, your ability to read people. You start replaying moments that once felt normal. That random argument, that night she seemed distant, that time she picked up her phone and turned it away slightly, that period where she felt off but said she was fine. At the time, you trusted her words. Now you question everything, because if she replaced you in 7 days, your brain automatically assumes she had a head start. And whether that's true or not, the damage is the same. It makes you feel like you were the only one fully in it, like you were the only one fighting for something she had already decided to let go of. And that imbalance feels like betrayal, even if technically it wasn't, because the emotional timing didn't match. You were still invested, she was already transitioning, and that creates this gap, a painful one, where you're grieving something she already processed, or avoided, or replaced, and it makes you feel late, like you're the last one to realize the relationship was over. And I hate that feeling, because I don't like feeling behind. I don't like feeling like I was operating with outdated information. I don't like feeling like I was loving someone who had already emotionally packed their bags. But maybe that's the reality. Maybe the breakup wasn't the beginning of her detachment. Maybe it was the end of it. Maybe she had already done her grieving while I was still trying to fix things. And that realization hurts in a different way. Because now it's not just that she moved on fast, it's that she moved on before I even knew we were done. And I'm stuck here wondering when it actually ended. Was it weeks before the breakup? Months? Did she slowly disconnect while I was still showing up? Because that's the part nobody prepares you for. the possibility that you were loving someone who was already halfway gone. And if that's true, then I wasn't replaced in a week. I was replaced long before that. I just didn't know it yet. But here's the thing, I'm slowly starting to understand. Even if she emotionally left before I did, that doesn't make me weak. It doesn't make me naive. It means I was committed. It means I was still trying. It means I was operating in good faith. And I'd rather be the one who stayed genuine than the one who quietly exited without saying it, because I know how I loved. I didn't keep options open. I didn't emotionally detach while pretending everything was fine. I didn't start building something new while something old was still alive. When I was in it fully. And if she replaced me in a week, then that says something about her capacity to detach, not about my capacity to matter. Still, that week will probably always sting, not because of the new guy, but because of what it symbolized. How quickly someone can shift focus, how fast attention can be redirected, how easy it can look to replace what felt permanent. But maybe permanence isn't about how long something lasts, maybe it's about how deeply it was felt. And if I'm still here processing it while she moved on fast, then maybe I was the one who felt it deeper. And that doesn't make me the loser. It makes me the one who actually experienced it. 7 days might have been enough for her to move forward, but it's not enough to erase what I gave, and I refuse to let her timeline rewrite my value, because being replaced quickly hurts, but being genuine never does. There's something else that hurts about being replaced in a week. It makes you question whether you were ever chosen or just convenient, because if someone can transition that smoothly, that fast, it starts to feel like you were just occupying space, like you weren't irreplaceable, like you were temporary comfort, and nobody wants to feel like temporary comfort. I keep thinking about the way she used to look at me, the way she said things like, I don't see myself with anyone else, the way she made it seem like what we had was rare, and now I'm sitting here wondering how rare something can really be if it can be replaced in 7 days. That's what makes it sting. Because rarity isn't supposed to be swappable, depth isn't supposed to be interchangeable. If something is special, it's supposed to leave a gap when it's gone. But her life doesn't look like there was a gap, it looks filled immediately. And that creates this internal conflict. Was I overestimating my importance? Did I romanticize something that was lighter to her than it was to me? Because when you care deeply, you assume the other person feels the same weight. You assume the attachment is mutual. You assume the history matters equally, but being replaced quickly makes you realize something uncomfortable. Not everyone feels at the same depth you do. Some people attach fast and detach faster. Some people build quickly and rebuild quicker. Some people don't see relationships as something sacred. They see them as something seasonal. And maybe that's the difference between us. Maybe I treat connection like something that deserves reverence, and she treats it like something that deserves momentum, because momentum doesn't stop, it just redirects, and that's exactly what she did. She redirected. The same attention, the same affection, the same emotional energy, just different recipient, and that's hard to swallow because it makes you feel like the container didn't matter, just the feeling. But here's the part I'm slowly realizing. If someone can redirect their attachment that fast, then maybe what they were attached to wasn't you. It was the feeling of being with someone. And that's not the same thing. There's a difference between loving a person and loving the experience of not being alone. And if she loved the experience more than she loved me, then of course she could replace me quickly, because she wasn't replacing a soul connection, she was replacing the role. And that hurts, but it also clarifies, because I don't want to be someone's role. I don't want to be someone's emotional placeholder. I don't want to be someone's for now. I want to be chosen with intention, held with depth, missed when I'm gone. And if she could swap me out in a week, then maybe I wasn't held the way I thought I was. But that doesn't mean I wasn't valuable. It just means she didn't hold me deeply. And those are two different things. Still, there's something about the speed that keeps echoing. 7 days. It makes it feel like I didn't leave a mark, like like I didn't leave impact, like I didn't leave space. But I know that's not true because impact isn't measured by how long someone stays single. It's measured by what they learned, what they felt, what they carry forward. And even if she doesn't feel it now, one day when the distraction fades, when the excitement settles, when she's sitting in quiet, she might finally process what she skipped, and by then I won't be waiting. Because here's what I'm starting to understand. Being replaced quickly doesn't mean you were insignificant. It means the other person couldn't sit with loss, and loss reveals maturity. If I'm still here processing, still reflecting, still rebuilding, then I'm not behind, I'm just doing it properly. 7 days might have been enough for her to move forward, but it's not enough to erase who I was, and I refuse to let her timeline determine my value, because I wasn't just someone she dated, I was someone who showed up fully, and that doesn't become meaningless just because someone else showed up faster. She replaced me in a week, but that week says more about her relationship with discomfort than it does about my worth. There's another layer to this that I don't talk about out loud. Anger, not loud anger, not screaming or crashing out. The quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest when you realize how easily someone redirected what you treated like sacred. Because I stayed loyal, I stayed committed, I stayed focused, and she moved on in 7 days. That makes you question fairness. It makes you feel like you played the game honestly while someone else was already preparing their next move. And I hate that it feels like a game because I never approached it like one. When I was with her, I wasn't scanning the room for upgrades, I wasn't entertaining backups, I wasn't lining up options just in case. I was in it, fully, and now I'm sitting here realizing she either wasn't or she detached long before I knew. And that's what builds resentment. The idea that I was emotionally present while she was emotionally preparing. Because now it feels like I was loyal to a version of her that didn't exist anymore, like I was committed to something she had already mentally ended, and that realization stings. But here's where it shifts, because the anger starts turning into clarity. If she could replace me that quickly, then she was already disconnecting. And if she was already disconnecting, then the relationship wasn't as mutual as I believed. And if it wasn't mutual, then I wasn't losing someone who was fully invested. I was losing someone who was already halfway out. That doesn't make it hurt less, but it reframes it, because now it's not about me being not enough. It's about her not being anchored. Anchored people don't drift that fast. Anchored people don't swap attachments like playlists. Anchored people sit with loss, and if she didn't sit with it, then maybe she never held it deeply, and that realization hurts, but it also frees me, because I don't want someone who can replace depth with distraction. I don't want someone who needs constant attention to feel stable. I want someone who values history, who respects connection, who understands that what you build with someone isn't disposable. And if she replaced me in a week, then maybe I was disposable to her. But that doesn't mean I'm disposable in general. It just means she wasn't built to keep me. And there's a difference. Still, there's a part of me that wonders if she ever thinks about it, if she ever pauses, if she ever compares, if she ever realizes how fast she moved. But I can't live in that space, because waiting for someone to feel what you felt is a trap, and I refuse to trap myself in her timeline. 7 days, that's how fast she moved. But here's the truth. I'd rather take my time healing than rush into something new just to prove I can. I'd rather rebuild properly than distract myself temporarily, because I know what I gave, and I know how I showed up. And I know I don't need to rush into something new to validate that. She replaced me in a week, but I'm rebuilding myself at a pace that lasts, and that's not weakness, that's depth. You know what else being replaced in a week does? It makes you question whether you were ever truly seen. Because if someone really sees you, your patterns, your effort, your loyalty, your depth, they don't just slide into something new like you were a temporary rental. They feel the absence, they sit in it, they notice the difference, and I keep wondering if she noticed the quiet after I stopped calling, if she noticed the lack of consistency I used to bring, if she noticed that the stability I provided isn't something you just duplicate overnight, or if she just filled the silence so fast that there was no space to notice it all. That's what hurt, the possibility that I wasn't deeply registered, that I was experienced but not understood, because there's a difference between being with someone and truly knowing them. And when someone replaces you quickly, it feels like they never fully knew the weight of what they had. It feels like they liked the experience of you, not the essence of you, and I can handle someone not choosing me. But it's harder to handle feeling like I was easy to move past. I keep thinking about how careful I was, how intentional I was, how I didn't play games, how I didn't keep backups, how when things got hard, I leaned in instead of pulling away. And in the end, it feels like none of that slowed her down. 7 days. That number keeps echoing like a clock ticking in reverse, because for me, 7 days after a breakup feels raw. It feels heavy. It feels like I'm still adjusting to the silence, but for her, 7 days was enough to build something new. And that contrast makes you feel like you loved harder than you were loved. And that's a lonely realization, because loving harder isn't something you brag about. It's something you feel when the other person moves on faster, and you're left holding the emotional weight. But here's what I'm starting to see clearly. Just because she moved on quickly doesn't mean she processed it deeply. Speed isn't strength. Speed can be avoidance. Speed can be distraction. Speed can be ego protection. Sometimes people rush into something new not because the old thing meant nothing, but because it meant too much. Because sitting alone would force them to face what they lost, and not everyone is strong enough to sit in that kind of silence, and maybe I am. Maybe the reason I'm still here thinking, reflecting, feeling, is because I actually let it hit me. I didn't numb it, I didn't immediately replace it, I didn't run from it, I sat with it, and sitting with pain requires maturity. It requires discipline, it requires emotional depth. So maybe this isn't about me being less valuable, maybe it's about me being more capable of processing, and that's not weakness, that's growth. Still, there's something about knowing she's creating new memories that stings, because those were supposed to be ours. The random laughs, the new places, the inside jokes. Now someone else gets that version of her, and I have to let go of the idea that it was only meant for me. And that's hard, but here's the truth I can't ignore anymore. If she could replace me in a week, then I was loving someone who wasn't built to stay long term. Because people who are built to stay don't detach that fast. They don't redirect that easily. They don't swap depth for novelty overnight. And I don't want someone who can treat connection like it's interchangeable. I want someone who understands the weight of history. Who understands that what you build with someone isn't disposable? Who understands that real attachment doesn't reset in 7 days? So yeah, she replaced me in a week, but I'm rebuilding myself in a way that lasts longer than a rebound ever will. And when I look back at this one day, I won't just remember the hurt, I'll remember the clarity, because being replaced quickly doesn't mean you were insignificant. It means the other person wasn't anchored, and I refuse to confuse someone else's instability with my lack of worth. 7 days might have been enough for her to move forward, but it's not enough to erase what I was. And one day, when I'm with someone who values depth the way I do, this week won't define me. It'll just be proof that I was never meant to stay where I was easily replaced. At some point, the hurt turns into something quieter. Not lighter, just quieter. Because you can only replay 7 days so many times before your brain gets tired of the echo. And when the noise slows down, clarity starts creeping in. I started asking myself a different question. Not why did she replace me so fast, but why am I measuring my value through her speed? Because that's what I was doing without realizing it. I was using her timeline as a mirror. If she moved on quickly, I must not have mattered deeply. If she looks happy, I must have been replaceable. If she didn't hesitate, I must not have left impact. But that logic is flawed. Her speed is not a measurement of my depth. Her distraction is not a reflection of my worth. Her ability to move forward quickly doesn't erase the way I showed up. And once I started separating those things, something shifted, because I know how I loved, I know I was intentional, I know I was loyal, I know I didn't treat what we had like it was temporary. So if she did, that says something about her capacity, not my value, and I had to stop turning her coping style into my insecurity, because that's what I was doing. I was letting her rebound rewrite my confidence. I was letting her quick transition convince me I was forgettable. But forgettable doesn't leave you reflecting. Forgettable doesn't leave you rebuilding. Forgettable doesn't leave you questioning your own growth. What we had meant something, even if she chose not to sit in that meaning. And maybe that's the difference between us. I process, she replaces. I reflect, she redirects. I sit with the silence, she fills it. And neither is necessarily wrong, but one builds depth, the other builds distraction, and depth always wins in the long run, because distraction fades, novelty fades, rebounds lose their adrenaline, and when that happens, whatever was avoided eventually resurfaces, and by then I won't be stuck in the same place, because while she rushed forward, I rebuilt properly. And rebuilding properly takes longer, but it lasts longer too. 7 days might have been enough for her to feel okay, but it wasn't enough for me to lose myself, and that's what matters. So yeah, she replaced me in a week. And for a while that felt like proof that I wasn't enough, proof that I was temporary, proof that I was easy to move past. But now, it feels like proof of something else. Proof that I love deeply, proof that I don't detach easily, proof that I don't treat connection like it's disposable. Because if I could have replaced her that fast and didn't, that says something. It says I value what I build. It says I respect history. It says I don't jump into something new just to soothe my ego. And I'd rather be the one who heals slowly than the one who forgets quickly. Because forgetting quickly doesn't mean you're strong. Sometimes it just means you're avoiding, and I don't want to avoid. I want to grow. I want to understand what worked, what didn't, what I tolerated, what I ignored. I want to rebuild my confidence without attaching it to someone else's timeline. She replaced me in a week, but she didn't replace my character. She didn't replace my loyalty. She didn't replace my ability to love fully. And one day, someone is going to experience that depth and recognize it immediately. Not treat it like a placeholder, not treat it like a phase, but treat it like something rare, because rare things don't get swapped in 7 days. They get protected, so maybe this wasn't about me being replaced, maybe it was about me being redirected away from someone who could move on that quickly, towards someone who won't. 7 days hurt, but it also clarified. I don't want to be in a position where I can be replaced that easily ever again. And the only way to guarantee that is to choose someone who understands the weight of what they're holding, and next time, I will. Have you ever felt like you're present but not really included? Like you're technically part of the group, but something always feels off. You're in the group chat, but the conversations seem to move without you. Plans get made, memories get shared, jokes get referenced, and somehow you're always a step behind, trying to piece things together on your own. You tell yourself it doesn't matter that you're overthinking it, but deep down it sits heavy. When you're with them in person, you laugh, you nod along, you play your role, but there's this quiet thought in the back of your mind asking if they'd even notice if you stop showing up. You start replaying everything, wondering if you talk too much or not enough, if you're boring, if you're just easy to overlook. And the worst part is how quietly it happens. No arguments, no clear rejection, just subtle distance that makes you feel smaller over time. You're always the one checking in, the one who would show up without hesitation if someone needed you. But when it's your turn, the effort doesn't seem to come back the same way. You're there for the moments, but somehow not fully a part of them. It's like being in the frame but never the focus, like being heard but never truly listened to. And no one really talks about how lonely that feels, how confusing it is to be surrounded by people and still feel unseen. unseen, to question your place while pretending everything's fine. If you feel this way, it doesn't mean you're dramatic or sensitive. It means you care, it means you value connection, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to feel like you matter to the people you give your time and energy to. You deserve friendships where your presence is felt, not tolerated, where you don't have to wonder if you belong, because being left out hurts the most when all you were ever trying to do was fit in without losing who you are. It's Valentine's Day, and yeah, I'm alone. No dinner plans, no flowers. No good morning, beautiful text waiting on my phone. Just me. And for a second, it hits. You scroll and see everyone posted up. Roses, candles, soft captions about my forever. And you start wondering what it feels like to be chosen like that. Not privately, not secretly, but confidently. I won't lie, there's a quiet sting to it. Not because I need the holiday, but because it reminds you of what you don't have. It makes you question things. Am I behind? Am I unlovable? Did I miss my person somehow? But here's the part I'm learning. Being alone today doesn't mean I'm unwanted. It means I haven't settled. I could have been in something halfway. Could have forced a connection just to say I wasn't alone tonight, but I didn't, and that matters. So yeah, I'm alone, but I'm not desperate, not chasing, not pretending, just here. And maybe that's not sad. Maybe it's strength. Valentine's Day has a way of making you feel behind. Like everyone else got the memo and you didn't. You open your phone and it's everywhere. Couples at dinner, surprise gifts, long captions about my person. And even if you're strong, even if you've healed, even if you're okay most days, comparison still creeps in. You start measuring your life against highlight reels. You forget that people only post the soft parts. You forget the arguments, the doubts, the almost breakups. All you see is what you don't have. And for a minute, it makes being alone feel heavier. Not because you suddenly need someone, but because the world makes it look like today is proof of something. Proof that you're chosen, proof that you're loved, proof that you made it. But here's the truth nobody posts. A relationship on Valentine's Day doesn't mean it's healthy. Flowers don't mean loyalty. A dinner reservation doesn't mean forever. And being alone doesn't mean you failed. It just means your story isn't on display today. And that's okay. There's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. And today forces you to notice it. Being alone is physical. It's no dinner plans, no shared dessert. No one reaching for your hand across the table. Lonely is emotional. Lonely is feeling unseen even when someone's sitting next to you. Lonely is being in a relationship where you still question if you matter. I've been lonely with someone before, and honestly, that felt worse than tonight, because at least now I'm not pretending. I'm not settling for half attention just to say I'm not alone. I'm not forcing conversation to avoid silence. It's just me. And yeah, sometimes that's quiet, sometimes it's heavy, but it's honest. There's no confusion here, no mixed signals, no wondering where I stand. So maybe being alone today isn't the loss I thought it was. Maybe it's just space for something real instead of something convenient. Let's be real. There's always that moment where you think about texting someone, not because you miss them, not because you want them back, but because you don't want to feel alone tonight. You scroll, you hover over a name, you think, it's just a harmless message, just a hey, just what are you up to? Just something to fill the silence. And for a second, your pride and your loneliness argue, because attention is easy to get. Connection isn't. You could text the almost, the ex, the person who only shows up when it's convenient, and maybe they'd respond. Maybe they'd even make you feel wanted for a few hours. But tomorrow, you'd wake up right back in the same place, because you didn't want them, you wanted distraction. And there's a difference. So instead of reaching for temporary comfort, you sit with the quiet. You choose not to reopen doors that were closed for a reason. You choose not to trade peace for short-term validation. And that choice? That's growth. Being alone tonight doesn't mean you're desperate. It means you're disciplined. There was a time this day would have broken me. I would have taken it personally, like it was proof that I wasn't enough. I would have blamed myself, wondered what I needed to fix, compared my timeline to everyone else's like love was some kind of race. But it doesn't hit like that anymore because I understand something now. Being single on Valentine's Day isn't a reflection of my worth, it's a reflection of my standards. I could have rushed into something, ignored red flags, stayed with someone who didn't choose me fully just so I wouldn't be alone today. But I didn't, and that's growth. This day doesn't control my value. It doesn't define my desirability. It doesn't measure my future. It's just a date on a calendar. And yeah, sometimes it still stings a little, but it doesn't shake me, because I'd rather spend one day alone than spend months with someone who makes me feel unseen. And that shift, that's peace. Spending Valentine's Day alone actually teaches you something. You learn who you are without someone validating you. There's no us to hide behind, no relationship status to lean on, no public display to prove you're wanted. It's just you, and that can feel exposing. Because when the noise dies down, you're left with your own thoughts. You start asking yourself, am I really okay? Am I lonely or just uncomfortable? Do I want love, or do I just hate feeling left out? And those questions matter, because being alone forces honesty. You realize you don't just want a relationship, you want the right one. Not someone to post, not someone to text for the night, not someone to fill space. You want something steady, intentional, real. And sitting alone tonight proves something important. You're willing to wait. You're willing to protect your peace. You're willing to sit through temporary discomfort instead of choosing permanent misalignment. That's not weakness, that's maturity. Valentine's Day alone doesn't mean you're lacking. It means you're not settling. Let's talk about self-love, but not the cliche version, not the bubble baths, not the I don't need anyone speeches, not pretending you're perfectly fine 24/7. Real self-love is quieter than that. It's not about convincing yourself you don't want love. It's about refusing to accept less just because you want it. It's choosing not to text someone who only values you when they're bored. It's not lowering your standards just to avoid feeling left out tonight. It's sitting in the discomfort without betraying yourself. Self-love isn't loud confidence. Sometimes it's discipline. It's saying, I deserve something real, even when being alone feels heavy. It's acknowledging, I want to be loved without shaming yourself for it. Because wanting love doesn't make you weak, settling does. So if you're alone today, that doesn't mean you failed at self-love. It might mean you're finally practicing. There's a quiet strength in being single in a world that glorifies couples. Everything is marketed around us, dinner for two, matching gifts, shared experiences, and when you're alone, it can feel like you're standing outside of something everyone else was invited to. But here's what people don't talk about. It takes strength to not force a relationship just to fit in. It takes strength to say, I'd rather wait in a culture that says, just take what you can get. Being single isn't a flaw. It's not a delay. It's not a sign you're unwanted. Sometimes it's a sign you refuse to compromise your standards for temporary comfort. There's power in knowing you're not with someone just to avoid this day. There's power in walking into restaurants alone without feeling embarrassed, and going home to yourself without feeling incomplete, because your worth was never meant to be measured by who's sitting next to you. And the strongest thing you can do is stand alone without shrinking. Maybe the season of being alone isn't punishment, maybe it's preparation. Because when you're by yourself, you learn things you don't learn in relationships. You learn your triggers, your patterns, your standards. You learn what you actually want without someone else influencing it. Being alone gives you clarity. Clarity about what you won't tolerate. Clarity about what makes you feel safe. Clarity about the difference between attention and intention. And maybe that clarity is building something in you. Patience, discernment, emotional discipline. So when something real does show up, you won't grab it out of fear. You won't cling to it out of loneliness. You won't confuse it with the first person who makes you feel seen. You'll recognize it calmly, because you'll know the difference between desperation and alignment. Maybe this Valentine's Day alone isn't a sign you're behind. Maybe it's proof you're becoming someone who won't settle. And that kind of growth doesn't always look romantic, but it lasts. At the end of the day, I'm still alone. No dramatic plot twist, no last-minute confession, no surprise flowers at my door, just me. But it doesn't feel heavy anymore, because being alone today didn't expose a flaw in me. It exposed my discipline. I didn't text someone out of boredom. I didn't settle just to post something. I didn't force a connection to avoid the silence. I chose peace, and that choice matters more than a dinner reservation ever could. Valentine's Day used to feel like proof that I was missing something. Now it feels like proof that I'm protecting something. My standards, my growth, my future. Because when love does come, I don't want it to be rushed. I don't want it to be convenient. I don't want it to be temporary. I want it to be real. So if that means spending this day alone instead of in something halfway, I'm okay with that. Being alone tonight doesn't mean I'm unloved. It means I'm waiting for something worth loving, and that's not sad. That's strength. No one really talks about how long some men are willing to wait for the one person they truly want. Not days, not weeks, months, sometimes years. And it usually starts with something small, something that doesn't sound final. She says, maybe one day. I'm just not ready right now. I need time. And he hears that like it's a promise, like it means not now doesn't mean never. So he holds on to those words, replays them, builds hope around them, and he waits. He doesn't make it obvious, he doesn't beg, he doesn't pressure. He waits quietly, patiently, convincing everyone, including himself, that he's fine. Because when a man sees you in his future, when he's already chosen you in his heart, waiting feels easier than letting go. He tells himself she's healing, she's figuring things out. She'll come back when she's ready. And sometimes it's hard to tell if that kind of waiting is beautiful or self-destructive, because love like that is rare. A man who's willing to pause his own needs, put his feelings on hold, stay loyal to the idea of you without knowing if you'll ever choose him back. That's not weakness, that's commitment. But commitment without clarity can slowly break someone. So if you have a man like that, someone willing to wait while you sort through your life, you can't treat that lightly. Take the time you need, heal what you need to heal, do what you need to do, but don't let him wait if you already know you're not coming back. Because the cruelest thing is letting someone hold on to hope when all that's waiting for them is disappointment. A lot of men won't walk away. They'll keep telling themselves one more month, one more sign, one more chance. Not because they're desperate, but because they care. So if you can love him again, do it fully. And if you can't, tell him, don't make him wait just to slowly lose himself loving someone who was never going to return. What people don't see is what waiting does to him. Not on the outside. He looks fine. He still shows up. Still laughs at the right moment, still pretends he hasn't built his days around the possibility of you coming back. But inside, everything is on pause. He doesn't let himself move on, doesn't let himself get close to anyone else, doesn't let himself fully hope or fully let go, because doing either would feel like betraying the future he pictured with you. So he lives in the middle, not chosen, not free, just waiting. He rereads old messages looking for reassurance that maybe he didn't imagine the connection. He remembers how you looked at him, how you laughed with him, how real it felt, and that's what keeps him there. Not obsession, not desperation, memory. He tells himself real love requires patience, that if it's meant to be, it'll come back around. But patience without direction starts turning into quiet pain, because every time you say, I don't know yet, he hears, not now, but maybe. Maybe is enough to keep him holding on. What breaks him isn't waiting itself. It's not knowing whether the waiting means something to you too. He would wait longer if he knew it mattered. He would walk away if he knew it didn't. But uncertainty keeps him stuck, and the longer he stays there, the more of himself he puts on hold. His needs, his timing, his chance to be loved fully, all for someone who may never come back. And that's the part no one talks about. Waiting doesn't just cost time. It costs pieces of him he doesn't realize he's giving away. At some point, the waiting starts asking questions back, not out loud, not in a way he can easily answer, just quiet thoughts that show up late at night when there's nothing left to distract him. Am I being patient or am I just afraid to let go? Because there's a difference. Patience comes with trust, with direction, with some kind of reassurance that the waiting has meaning. but what he has is uncertainty. He's not waiting because he's calm. He's waiting because walking away would mean admitting that the future he imagined might never happen. And that's harder than staying still, so he tells himself stories. That love is supposed to hurt a little, that timing matters more than readiness, that if he just proves he's loyal enough, consistent enough, understanding enough, it'll all make sense one day. But love isn't supposed to feel like erasing yourself. It isn't supposed to require putting your life on hold indefinitely. It isn't supposed to make you question whether your needs matter at all. Still, he stays. His hope is quiet, but it's persistent. He whispers things like, she'll come back. She just needs time. It'll be worth it. And as long as that voice exists, letting go feels like failure, like giving up on something real. What scares him most isn't the idea of her choosing someone else. It's the idea that she might never choose anyone, and he still waited anyway. That he might look back one day and realize he sacrificed his own chance to be loved fully for someone who was never coming back. And that realization doesn't make him angry. It makes him tired, because waiting stopped feeling romantic a long time ago. Now it just feels heavy. And deep down, he's starting to understand something he's been avoiding. Love shouldn't feel like standing still while life passes you by. There comes a moment when waiting stops feeling like love and starts feeling like self-abandonment. It doesn't happen all at once. There's no dramatic breaking point. It's quieter than that. It's the realization that his life has been moving around someone who isn't moving toward him, that he's been planning a future with someone who won't even promise a present. He notices it in small ways, how he avoids making plans because what if she comes back? How he turns down opportunities because he doesn't want to feel unavailable when she finally decides. How he measures his growth, his happiness, his healing against whether or not it would still fit her. And that's when it hits him. Waiting has slowly become a way of disappearing, not because he doesn't love her, but because loving her has started costing him himself. He tells himself love requires sacrifice, but sacrifice isn't supposed to be one-sided. Real love doesn't ask you to pause your entire life without offering anything solid in return. And for the first time, he lets himself ask a dangerous question. If she never comes back, would this still have been worth it? That question hurts because the answer isn't immediate, because a part of him still wants to believe that patience will be rewarded, but another part, the quieter, tired part, knows something has to change. He starts realizing that choosing himself doesn't mean he loved her less. It means he finally loved himself enough to stop waiting in uncertainty. Letting go doesn't erase what they had. It doesn't make the feelings fake. It doesn't turn the waiting into a mistake. It just means he's done confusing hope with a promise, because love shouldn't require you to disappear quietly just to prove you're loyal. And walking away doesn't mean he stopped caring. Sometimes it means he cared enough to stop hurting himself in silence. Letting go hurts differently than waiting ever did. Waiting was familiar, painful but predictable. It gave him something to hold on to, even if that something was uncertainty. Letting go feels like free fall, because when he finally stops waiting, there's no future version of them to lean on anymore. No, maybe one day. No imagined moment where she finally says she's ready. Just silence, and that silence is loud at first. He feels it in the empty spaces where hope used to sit, in the routines he built around the idea of her coming back. For a while, he doesn't know who he is without the waiting, because waiting gave his love direction. It gave his patience purpose. It made the pain feel meaningful. Now he has to sit with something harder, grief, not just for her, but for the version of himself who believed love always meant endurance. He realizes how long he ignored his own needs, how often he told himself later, instead of asking for what he deserved now. And that realization stings, because he wasn't weak, he was loyal. He just stayed loyal to someone who couldn't meet him where he stood. Healing doesn't come all at once. Some days he still wonders if he gave up too soon, if one more month would have changed everything. But then he remembers how heavy the waiting felt, how small his world had become, how much of himself he put on hold. And slowly something shifts. He starts choosing himself in quiet ways. He makes plans without hesitation. He opens himself to new moments without checking if they'd interfere with the future that no longer exists. And for the first time in a long time, his life starts moving forward again. Letting go didn't mean he stopped loving her. It meant he stopped abandoning himself. And that's when healing actually began. After the waiting ends, there's a strange emptiness that follows, not because he lost her, but because he lost the version of himself that believed love had to hurt to be real. For a long time, his worth was tied to patience, to loyalty, to how much he was willing to endure without being chosen back, and when that chapter closed, he didn't immediately feel strong. He felt unsure, because when you spend so long putting someone else first, you forget what it feels like to be a priority in your own life. He starts noticing it in small moments, how uncomfortable it feels to ask for what he needs, how he second guesses himself when someone shows interest too easily, because ease feels unfamiliar now. He was used to earning affection, proving commitment, waiting quietly without complaint, so when someone shows up without confusion or hesitation, it almost feels wrong. Like love should require more suffering than this. That's when he realizes how deeply the waiting shaped him. He didn't just pause his life, he learned to minimize himself. He learned that his needs could wait, that his feelings were negotiable, that love meant staying even when nothing was being offered in return. Unlearning that takes time. He has to remind himself that love isn't supposed to feel uncertain, that commitment doesn't mean self-erasure, that being chosen shouldn't feel like a reward for endurance. Slowly he starts rewriting the rules. He lets himself want clarity. He lets himself walk away when something feels one-sided. He stops confusing consistency with compatibility, and piece by piece his sense of worth comes back. Not because someone else validates it, but because he no longer abandons himself to keep someone else comfortable. He waited because he meant it, but now he understands something important. The right person won't need him to suffer quietly to prove his love. They'll meet him where he stands. Waiting leaves marks, not obvious ones. Nothing you can point to and explain easily. But after someone has waited that long, they don't love the same way again. He becomes more careful, not closed off, and just aware, because once you've given that much patience to the wrong person, you learn how expensive your loyalty really is. He no longer rushes into hope, no longer builds futures in his head without evidence in the present, not because he's bitter, but because he knows what it costs to believe too soon. He listens differently now. When someone says, "I'm not ready," he hears it clearly. When someone says, "I don't know what I want," he doesn't translate it into possibility. He takes words as they are, not as promises he can grow hope around. That doesn't make him cold, it makes him intentional. He still loves deeply, still commits fully, but only where clarity exists, because waiting taught him that love shouldn't feel like uncertainty stretched over time. He no longer tries to prove his worth through endurance. He doesn't stay where effort isn't mutual. He doesn't confuse potential with reality. And that makes him harder to lose, not because he withholds love, but because he now knows when to walk away. He understands that choosing someone means choosing himself too. That real connection doesn't ask him to pause his life indefinitely. It doesn't ask him to suffer quietly just to stay loyal. Waiting didn't break him, it refined him. It taught him what love isn't, though he could finally recognize what it is. And when he loves again, it won't be out of fear of losing. It will be out of certainty. The next time he loves someone, it won't start with waiting. It'll start with clarity, because once you've waited that long for someone who couldn't meet you halfway, you stop confusing effort with connection. He won't wonder where he stands anymore. He won't analyze pauses, he won't read into silence or turn uncertainty into hope, not because he's less romantic, but because he's learned what love is supposed to feel like. The next person he loves won't have to guess how he feels. They won't have to question his loyalty. They won't have to wonder if he's serious, because when he chooses fully, but this time he'll only stay where he's chosen back. He won't pause his life waiting for someone to decide. He won't put his heart on hold for potential. He understands now that real love doesn't keep you guessing. It doesn't stretch uncertainty across months and years. It doesn't ask you to sacrifice peace just to stay connected. The next person will feel the difference, not because he loves harder, but because he loves cleaner, with boundaries, with honesty, with the expectation of mutual effort. And that's the quiet shift no one sees. Waiting didn't make him bitter, it made him precise. It taught him that commitment means nothing without intention behind it. So when he gives his time again, his patience again, his heart again, it won't be because he's afraid to lose. It'll be because both of them are choosing each other in the present. Not someday, not maybe, now. The people who wait the longest are often the hardest to replace, not because they demand attention, not because they make noise, but because they loved with patience most people don't have anymore. When he was waiting, his presence felt easy to overlook. He was steady, consistent, always there, and consistency can become invisible to people who aren't ready to value it. So they assume he'll always be there, that his patience has no limit, that his loyalty is permanent. But what they don't realize is that waiting teaches restraint. It teaches someone exactly how much they're willing to give before they stop. So when he finally walks away, it's quiet, no drama, no announcement, no attempt to make anyone regret it. He just goes, and that's when the absence is felt. Because he wasn't loud, he was grounding. He was the one who remembered, the one who stayed calm, the one who made things feel safe without asking for anything in return. And when that's gone, it leaves a space it's hard to fill, not with excitement, not with attention, but with depth. That's when people realize they didn't lose someone dramatic, they lost someone rare, someone who would have waited longer than anyone else, but chose not to abandon himself anymore. And that's the part that hurts the most. Not that he left, but that he learned how to leave. Because once someone like that is gone, they don't come back confused. They don't come back waiting. They move forward with intention. And by the time anyone realizes what they lost, he's already chosen himself. Waiting was never the problem. The problem was waiting without being chosen back. For a long time, he believed love was proven by how much you were willing to endure, how long you could stay, how patient you could be, how quietly you could hurt without asking for reassurance, and he did that. He waited through uncertainty, through mixed signals, through not right now that never turned into I'm ready, not because he didn't value himself, but because he valued love deeply, but eventually he learned the difference between commitment and self-sacrifice. Real love doesn't keep you suspended. It doesn't ask you to pause your life while someone decides if you're worth choosing. Real love meets you where you are, and the moment he understood that, waiting lost its meaning, because waiting only makes sense when both people are moving toward each other, even slowly, not when one person is standing still hoping to be picked someday. Walking away wasn't easy. It didn't feel empowering at first. It felt like grief. Grief for the future he imagined. Grief for the version of himself who believed patience would be rewarded no matter the cost. But over time, that grief turned into clarity. He realized something simple but life-changing. Love should feel mutual, certain, chosen in the present, not promised someday. So now, when he looks back on the waiting, he doesn't see weakness. He sees proof that he can love deeply. But he also sees the moment he learned to stop giving that depth to people who couldn't return it. He waited because he meant it, but he walked away because he finally understood that the right person won't need him to wait at all. They'll choose him clearly, willingly, and without hesitation, and and that's not something you ever have to earn by putting your life on hold. It's always at night when everything hits at once. Your room gets quiet, your phone is dry, everyone's asleep, and suddenly your mind keeps replaying everything. You try to forget the laughs, the old texts, the what ifs. You start missing people you swore you moved on from. You start feeling things you buried a long time ago. And it's not even about wanting them back. It's about wishing things just ended differently. Wishing you said more or nothing at all. You ever lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling like the past is louder than the present? It's like Aaron from Attack on Titan, haunted by the weight of what's already gone, but still pretending to move forward like it doesn't hurt. And the worst part? You can't talk to anyone about it because it's 2 a.m., and no one would get it anyway. But let me remind you this. Those memories, they're just echoes. They feel loud now, but they don't define you. You lived through them and you're still here, and yeah, it hurts, but that means you cared. And caring, that's not weakness. That's proof you're human. So breathe. You won't feel like this forever. It always gets heavier at night. Not during the day when there's noise, distractions, people moving around. It's when everything finally shuts off. When your room is still, your phone hasn't buzzed in hours, and the world feels like it forgot about you. That's when your thoughts stop waiting their turn. Your mind starts pulling things out of storage you didn't ask for. Old conversations, screenshots you never deleted, moments you thought you were over until they show up uninvited. You tell yourself you've moved on, and maybe you have. Moving on doesn't mean forgetting. It just means learning how to live with what still lingers. You don't even want them back. That's the confusing part. You just wish things had ended cleaner, wish you explained yourself better, or maybe wish you stayed quiet instead of saying too much. You replay scenarios that can't be fixed, trying to rewrite endings that are already locked in. You lie there staring at the ceiling, feeling like the past is louder than the life you're living right now, like everything that mattered before is screaming for attention, while the present barely whispers. You wonder why it still affects you, why it still sneaks up on you when you thought you were stronger than this. And the worst part is the timing. Too late to text anyone, too late to explain how heavy your chest feels, too late to ask for reassurance without feeling dramatic. So you just sit with it, alone, letting it hit you in waves. It's like carrying something invisible all day, and at night you finally feel the full weight of it. You act fine, you move forward, but inside, there's still grief for versions of life that never happened, for people who changed, for moments that ended before you were ready. But here's what matters. Those memories aren't commands, they're echoes. They sound loud in the quiet, but they don't control where you're going. They don't erase the fact that you survived them. They don't cancel the future you haven't lived yet. If it hurts, that doesn't mean you're weak. It means you felt deeply. It means something mattered to you. And caring isn't something to be ashamed of even when it leaves scars. So breathe. Let the night pass. You won't always feel like this, and one day the quiet won't feel so heavy anymore. There's a certain kind of loneliness that only shows up at night. Not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from remembering when you weren't, when someone used to be a constant, a voice you could reach for without thinking, a presence that made the quiet feel safe instead of heavy. At night you realize how much space they used to fill. Now that space just exists, unoccupied, untouched. You don't want to fill it with anyone else because it doesn't feel right yet. So you sit with it, even though it aches. Your mind starts drifting into the what ifs. What if I had said things differently? What if I stayed quiet instead of reacting? What if I left sooner? What if I tried harder? You run through 100 alternate endings, knowing none of them change reality, but somehow your brain keeps trying anyway. That's the trap of nighttime thinking. It convinces you that if you replay the past enough times, you'll finally find peace in it. But peace doesn't live there anymore. All that's left are lessons and memories, and sometimes even those feel too loud. You start feeling behind in life, like everyone else is moving forward while you're stuck unpacking things you never asked to carry. You scroll through your phone, watching people live, love, laugh, post highlights, and you wonder why your heart feels so heavy when everyone else seems fine. But comparison at night is dangerous. You're seeing everyone else's daylight while you're stuck in your midnight, and that will always feel unfair. What you don't see is how many people are lying awake just like you, staring at ceilings, replaying moments, trying to make peace with things that didn't turn out the way they hoped. You're not broken for feeling this way. You're processing, you're grieving, you're letting go in real time, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. And slowly, very slowly, these nights will change. They won't disappear, but they won't crush you either. The memories will still come, but they won't steal your breath. The quiet will start feeling less empty and more calm. You won't always feel haunted by the past. One night, you'll realize you're thinking about tomorrow instead of yesterday. Eventually, you start noticing that the nights don't hit the same every time. Some nights still hurt, yeah, but other nights feel quieter in a different way. Not empty, just still. And that's when you realize something is slowly shifting inside you, even if you didn't notice it during the day. You begin to understand that missing someone doesn't always mean you want them back. Sometimes it just means they were part of a chapter that mattered. A chapter that shaped you. And endings like that don't disappear quietly. They linger, they echo, not because you're stuck, but because you lived it fully. At night, you start reflecting less on them and more on yourself, on how much you've changed since then, on how certain things you tolerated before you'd never accept now, on how some versions of you had to break so newer ones could exist. And that realization is bittersweet, because growth often comes wrapped in loss. You realize that the pain isn't pointless. It taught you boundaries. It taught you what effort looks like when it's real. It taught you how to spot the difference between attention and intention. Those lessons didn't come cheap. They weren't wasted either. There are still moments when the past creeps in unannounced, and a random thought tightens your chest for a second. But now, you don't spiral the way you used to. You acknowledge it, let it pass. You don't punish yourself for remembering. You don't shame yourself for caring, and that's progress. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? You start asking, what did this teach me? And that question changes everything. The nights don't feel like battles anymore. They feel like checkpoints. Moments where you check in with yourself, where you realize how far you've come even if you still have a long way to go. And one day, you'll lie in bed and realize your thoughts aren't pulling you backward anymore. They're just passing through. And for the first time in a while, the quiet won't feel heavy. It'll feel earned. There's a point where the night stops feeling like an enemy and starts feeling like a mirror. Not one that judges you, but one that shows you who you've become. You're not the same person you were back then. You don't react the same. You don't attach the same. You don't give pieces of yourself away as easily. And while part of you misses that softness, another part of you is grateful you learned how to protect it. You start realizing that healing isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show up all at once. It happens in quiet moments like this, when you choose not to spiral, when you choose not to reach out, when you choose to sit with your feelings instead of running from them. Those small decisions stack up, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. Some nights you'll still feel that ache, that sense of loss, but it won't feel like panic anymore. It'll feel like a reminder that you loved something real, reminder that you're capable of depth. And instead of breaking you, that thought will start to ground you. You'll also start noticing how much space you've created. Space in your mind, space in your heart, space in your life. At first, that space felt terrifying, like something was missing. Now it starts to feel like potential, like room for something healthier, something calmer, something that doesn't require you to lose sleep just to feel secure. You begin trusting yourself again, trusting that you can handle whatever comes next, trusting that even if something ends, you won't fall apart the way you once did. You've already proven that to yourself night after night just by getting through. And that's the part people don't see. They don't see the growth that happens in silence. They don't see the strength it takes to sit with your thoughts and still choose to move forward. But you know, and that's enough. The night won't always feel like this. One day it'll just be night. No wait, no replay, just rest. At some point, you stop fighting the memories when they show up. You don't chase them, but you don't shove them away either. You let them pass through like background noise instead of letting them take over the whole room. That's when you realize you're not healing by force anymore. You're healing by acceptance. You accept that some nights will still feel heavier than others, that certain dates, certain places, certain songs will still stir something inside you. But now, those moments don't define your entire mood. Don't steal the whole night. They're just moments, and moments pass. You also start understanding that the past isn't trying to pull you back, just reminding you that you lived, that you felt something real, that you weren't numb, and there's something powerful about that, because numbness is easy. Feeling is brave. You stop asking yourself if you'll ever fully move on. That question slowly loses importance. Instead, you start asking, am I okay right now? And most nights, the answer becomes yes. Not perfect, not amazing, but okay, and that's enough. You notice how your thoughts begin drifting toward things ahead of you. Plans, goals, small things you're looking forward to. First, it surprises you. Like, when did my mind start doing this? But that's how healing works. It sneaks up on you, one quiet night at a time. And even when the past visits, it doesn't feel like a threat anymore. It feels like a chapter you've already read, one that mattered, one that changed you, but not one you need to reread every night to understand. You're learning how to rest without carrying everything with you, how to sleep without replaying endings, how to let the present exist without being overshadowed by what's already gone, and that's progress. Whether you recognize it yet or not, there's a quiet confidence that starts forming in you after all those nights. It doesn't come from feeling happy all the time. It comes from knowing you can sit with discomfort and still be okay. You've already faced the worst parts of your thoughts in the dark, and they didn't destroy you. That realization changes how you move through life. You stop being afraid of the quiet. Silence doesn't feel like abandonment anymore. It feels neutral, sometimes even comforting. You don't need constant noise or validation to feel grounded. You've learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. And that's something a lot of people never figure out. You also become more honest with yourself about what you want, about what you won't tolerate again, about the kind of connections you deserve. The nights taught you that chasing what's gone only keeps you stuck, and protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. And when you think back on the people you missed, the pain isn't as sharp. There's still tenderness there, but it's softer now, less like a wound and more like a scar. Proof that something happened, but also proof that it healed. You start trusting that life doesn't end with one loss, that the world doesn't stop because something did. You realize that endings don't erase everything that came before them, and they don't block everything that comes after. They just redirect you, and one night, without any dramatic moment, you'll notice something small but important. You're tired in a normal way, not emotionally drained, not overwhelmed, just ready to rest. And as you close your eyes, you won't feel haunted, you'll feel present, and then one night, it doesn't hurt anymore. Not in the way it used to. You still remember, but the memories don't grip your chest. They don't steal your breath. They don't pull you backwards. They just exist quietly like old photographs stored away instead of wounds left open. You realize you didn't get over it all at once. You outgrew it slowly, night by night, thought by thought. You kept living even when it was hard. You kept choosing yourself even when part of you wanted to stay stuck in what was familiar. And without noticing, you built something stronger than closure. You built resilience. The nights that once felt unbearable became lessons. They taught you how to sit with yourself, how to listen instead of run, how to accept endings without needing them to make sense. And because of that, you're not afraid of feeling anymore. You're not afraid of caring. You're not afraid of loving again when the time is right. You understand now that pain doesn't mean you failed. It means you were present. It means you opened your heart in a world that doesn't always know how to hold it gently, and that's not something to regret, that's something to respect. Past no longer defines you, it informs you, it shaped you, but it doesn't own you. You carry it with wisdom now, not weight. And the quiet you once feared, it's become peace. So if tonight feels heavy, remember this. You won't always feel like this. You are moving forward even when it doesn't feel obvious. And one day, you'll look back at these nights and realize they didn't break you. They built you. Sometimes I don't question whether I love people. I know I do. I love intentionally, I love in details. I love in the quiet ways that don't always get noticed. I remember the small things you said 3 months ago. I notice when your voice sounds slightly different. I pay attention to your moods without you having to explain them. If you're overwhelmed, I adjust. If you're distant, I check in. If you're hurting, I feel it too. So when I sit alone and that thought creeps in, am I actually loved the same way? It doesn't come from insecurity. It comes from imbalance, because loving someone isn't hard for me, but feeling consistently loved back, that's where it gets complicated. There's a difference between being wanted and being valued, between being chosen and being considered, between someone enjoying your presence and someone protecting your heart. And sometimes I can't tell which one I am. Am I loved, or am I just convenient? Am I loved, or am I just consistent? Am I loved, or am I just the safe option, the stable one, the reliable one, the one who won't leave easily? Because people say I love you all the time, but love isn't proven in the words, it's proven in patterns. Do you show up the same way on random days, not just when you're lonely? Do you care about my emotions when they're inconvenient? Do you notice when I go quiet, or do you only feel my absence when I stop giving? That's the part nobody talks about. You can be in a relationship, you can be talking every day. You can be physically close and still feel emotionally unsure, still feel like you're giving more than you're receiving, still feel like if you stop trying so hard, everything would fall apart. And if that's true, is that love? Or is that maintenance? I don't need constant reassurance. I don't need over-the-top affection. I don't need dramatic gestures. But I need to feel secure. I need to feel like I matter when I'm not performing strength. I need to feel like I'm loved even on the days I'm quiet, tired, distant, not at my best. Because real love doesn't just enjoy you when you're easy. It stays steady when you're human. And I think that's what scares me, the possibility that I'm loved for what I provide, not for who I am, loved for my stability, loved for my patience, loved for my understanding, but not deeply studied, not emotionally prioritized, not carefully handled. And if I'm being honest, I don't want half love. I don't want to be someone's comfort without being their commitment. I don't want to be someone's peace without being their priority. So yeah, sometimes I sit with that quiet question. Am I actually loved, or am I just really good at loving others? The hardest part about questioning love is that it doesn't always come from obvious neglect, doesn't always come from cheating or lying or someone clearly mistreating you. Sometimes it comes from subtle absence, from emotional gaps you can't quite explain, from feeling like you're standing next to someone but not fully with them. Because love isn't just about presence, it's about engagement. It's about whether someone studies you the way you study them. I ask myself things like, if I stopped initiating, how long would it take for them to notice? If I didn't send the good morning text, would they send one first? If I went quiet for a few days, would they check in because they care or because they're bored? And I hate that those thoughts even exist, because when love feels secure, you don't test it in your head, you don't calculate effort, you don't keep mental score, you just exist inside it peacefully. But when love feels uneven, your brain starts tracking patterns. Who apologizes first? Who makes more time? Who adjusts more? And that's when the doubt begins. Not loud doubt, quiet doubt. The kind that sits in your chest at night. The kind that makes you reread conversations. The kind that makes you wonder if you're asking for too much or just asking the wrong person. I don't want dramatic love. I don't want obsession. I don't want someone who can't function without me. I want someone who chooses me consciously, daily, not because I'm easy, not because I'm stable, not because I don't cause problems, but because they genuinely value me, because they care about my internal world, because they don't want to risk losing me through laziness or emotional distance. That's the difference. You can love someone and still be careless. You can love someone and still take them for granted. You can love someone and still assume they'll never leave. But being loved properly, that feels intentional. It feels protected. It feels like someone is actively maintaining the connection, not just enjoying it. And sometimes I wonder, if I pulled my energy back to neutral, if I stopped overcompensating, if I loved at the same level I was receiving, would it still feel strong? Or would everything start crumbling? Because if my effort is what's holding us up, that's not love, that's imbalance disguised as loyalty. And I don't want to resent someone for something I never addressed, but I also don't want to keep shrinking just to avoid conflict. I want to feel wanted loudly enough that I don't question it silently. I want to feel secure enough that I don't rehearse conversations in my head. I want to feel chosen in a way that removes doubt instead of feeding it, because love shouldn't feel like something you constantly measure. It should feel like something you rest inside, and until I can sit in it, without wondering if I matter the same way, I think that question will always echo softly. Am I actually loved, or am I just deeply loving? I think what makes this question heavy is that I don't doubt your feelings. I doubt your effort, because feelings are invisible. Effort isn't. You can tell me you love me, you can say it in the right tone, you can even mean it. But love that isn't maintained eventually feels like memory, and I don't want to live off potential. I don't want to survive off they care, they're just bad at showing it. Because if I can show it, if I can adjust, if I can communicate clearly, why does it feel like I'm the one stretching more? That's where the exhaustion comes in. Not from loving you, from overcompensating for the space you leave. There's a specific loneliness that comes when you're the emotionally aware one, when you're the one who brings things up calmly, when you're the one who says, let's talk about it, when you're the one who makes sure small issues don't become big ones. And sometimes I wonder, if I stopped being that person, would you step into that role? Or would we slowly drift because I stopped carrying the emotional weight? That's not partnership, that's imbalance. And imbalance slowly turns love into doubt. I don't need perfection. I need reciprocity. I need to feel like if I fall apart, you won't just watch. I need to feel like if I go quiet, you'll notice. I need to feel like if I stop being strong for a moment, you won't become distant. Because love isn't just about who stays when it's easy. It's about who leans in when things feel uncomfortable. And sometimes I don't feel leaned into, I feel leaned on. And there's a difference. I don't want to be your emotional safety net without you being mine. I don't want to be the consistent one while wondering if I'm consistently valued. And maybe you do love me, but if I constantly have to question it, then something about the way it's being expressed isn't landing. Because real love doesn't eliminate all fear, but it does eliminate constant uncertainty. It doesn't make you feel like you're negotiating your worth. It makes you feel secure enough to stop asking yourself if you matter. And until I can sit in this without quietly measuring effort, without wondering if I'm too much, without shrinking my needs to maintain peace, that question will stay in the back of my mind. Am I actually loved, or am I just deeply convenient? I think the real fear isn't that you don't love me, it's that you love me comfortably. There's a difference. Comfortable love is quiet. It assumes, it relaxes a little too much. It stops trying as hard because it believes I'm not going anywhere. And maybe I won't, but that doesn't mean I don't notice the shift. In the beginning, effort feels automatic. You call just to hear my voice. You ask questions and actually wait for the answers. You care about how my day went, not just what happened. But once things feel stable, do you still pursue me? Do you still choose me loudly? Do you still protect the connection like it could be lost? Or do you just exist in it? Because love that stops being intentional slowly starts feeling optional. And I don't want to feel optional in someone's life. I don't want to be the person you assume will always understand, the person you assume won't leave, the person you assume doesn't need reassurance, because the strong ones still need softness, the independent ones still need consistency, the calm ones still need effort, and sometimes I think people forget that. They mistake my patience for infinite tolerance. They mistake my understanding for emotional immunity. They mistake my loyalty for permanence. But even loyal people get tired. Even understanding people feel hurt. Even calm people question things when the effort changes. I don't want to be loved lazily. I don't want to be loved based on convenience. I want to be loved actively. I want someone who doesn't just assume I know they care, but make sure I feel it. Someone who doesn't just stay, but stays with intention. Because here's the truth, if I ever stopped trying the way I do now, would you fight for this the same way? If I ever pulled my energy back to neutral, would you step up or would you get distant? That question alone tells me a lot. Love shouldn't feel like something I'm maintaining by myself. It shouldn't feel like if I relax for a second, everything will slowly fade. It should feel mutual, balanced, protected from both sides. And until I feel that consistently, not just in moments, not just after conflict, not just when I express doubt, that quiet thought will linger. Am I loved deeply or just comfortably? Maybe the hardest part about all of this is that I don't want to accuse you. I don't want to sound ungrateful. I don't want to seem insecure. I don't want to turn something small into something heavy. But silence builds pressure, and pressure turns into quiet resentment, because when I feel like I'm giving more than I'm receiving, I don't explode, I adjust. I overthink, I analyze, I start loving more carefully, and that's when something shifts inside me. I stop being soft in the same way, I stop opening up as freely, I stop expressing needs because I don't want to feel like a burden. And you probably wouldn't even notice at first, because I don't change loudly, I change subtly. And that's the scary part, because once I start protecting myself emotionally, I don't fully come back the same. I don't want to have to guard my heart with someone who says they love me. I don't want to measure my words. I don't want to calculate how much reassurance I can ask for without seeming too much. I want to exist freely. But freedom only comes when love feels secure, not intense, not obsessive, secure. The kind of secure where I don't have to question your effort after a disagreement. The kind of secure where your consistency doesn't depend on my mood. The kind of secure where I don't feel like I have to earn softness from you, because love shouldn't feel conditional. It shouldn't spike when I'm easy to love and dip when I need extra understanding. And sometimes I ask myself something deeper. If I disappeared tomorrow, would you miss me because you love me? Or because you lost something that benefited you? Would you miss my heart? Or just my stability? Would you miss the way I care, or just the fact that I cared consistently? That difference matters more than people realize, because I don't want to be someone's comfort zone if I'm not also their conscious choice. I don't want to be someone's safe option if I'm not also their priority. And I don't want to keep pouring into something where I feel like I'm the emotional backbone. Love should feel like two people holding it up, not one person carrying it quietly. And until I feel that weight shared, I'll keep asking myself softly, am I actually loved, or am I just deeply dependable? I think what I've realized is this: if I constantly have to ask myself whether I'm loved, then something inside me doesn't feel safe, because real love doesn't require constant decoding. It doesn't make you sit alone at night replaying conversations. It doesn't make you question your worth after small disagreements. It doesn't make you shrink just to maintain peace. Real love feels steady, not perfect, not dramatic, steady. It feels like someone who chooses you, even when you're not at your best. It feels like someone who reassures without being forced. It feels like someone who protects your heart, like it's their responsibility too. And maybe you do love me, but if your love makes me anxious, if it makes me overanalyze, if it makes me feel like I'm asking for too much when I ask for consistency, then it's not landing the way love should, because love shouldn't make you question your value. It should reinforce it. It shouldn't make you feel like you're lucky to be chosen. It should make you feel mutually chosen. Maybe the real shift isn't asking, am I actually loved? Maybe it's asking, do I feel secure here? Do I feel prioritized? Do I feel emotionally safe? Because love isn't just something someone says. It's something you experience repeatedly. It's in the tone, the effort, the consistency after comfort sets in, the way someone handles you when you're difficult, not just when you're easy. And if I'm honest, I don't want intense love. I don't want dramatic love. I don't want love that feels like a roller coaster. I want love that makes me stop asking this question entirely. Love that's so clear, so intentional, so consistent that doubt doesn't have room to grow. Because if I'm constantly wondering whether I'm loved, then maybe I'm not asking for too much. Maybe I just haven't experienced love that makes the answer obvious. And when I do, I won't have to ask. I'll know. Dating feels rigged now. Not in a dramatic, love doesn't exist way, but in a quiet, frustrating way. Like the rules changed while I was still playing by the old ones. I grew up thinking effort mattered, consistency mattered, loyalty mattered. I thought if you showed up honestly, communicated clearly, and moved with intention, things would naturally fall into place. But now, it feels like the opposite gets rewarded. The emotionally unavailable ones get chased. The inconsistent ones get excused. The ones who barely text back somehow stay mysterious. And the ones who actually try, they're too available. It's like showing effort is unattractive now. Like caring too much is a flaw. And that messes with your head. Because I don't want to become someone who plays games. But it feels like the game is designed for people who do. Dating used to feel simple. You liked someone, you talked, you built something. Now it feels strategic. How long should I wait before replying? Should I seem busy? Should I hold back how much I like them? Should I act like I care less than I do? Why does authenticity feel like a disadvantage? It's exhausting. Because I don't want to calculate emotions. I don't want to pretend I'm less interested just to seem more attractive. But the moment you show real interest, there's this fear that you'll lose leverage. Leverage, that's what dating feels like now. Leverage. Who cares less? Who replies slower? who has more options, and I'm tired of that dynamic because love isn't supposed to feel like a power struggle. It's supposed to feel mutual. What really makes it feel rigged is this: the more healed you are, the harder it feels to connect. If you have boundaries, you're too strict. If you communicate clearly, you're too serious. If you move intentionally, you're moving too fast. But if you're emotionally distant, if you're inconsistent, if you keep people guessing, that's attractive, and I don't understand it because I worked on myself. I healed attachment issues. I learned to communicate instead of shutting down. I stopped chasing people who weren't sure about me, and somehow that made dating harder. It feels like emotional maturity is rare, and when it is rare, it's misunderstood. There's also the illusion of options. Social media makes it look like everyone is replaceable, like there's always someone better one swipe away. So instead of building through discomfort, people reset. Instead of communicating through confusion, people ghost. Instead of fixing, they upgrade. And that constant availability of more makes commitment feel fragile. Why work through something hard when you can just download someone new? It's a dangerous mindset because real connection isn't built in perfect conditions. It's built through friction, through patience, through staying, but staying feels outdated, and that's what makes it feel rigged. I think the hardest part is trying to stay authentic in a system that rewards detachment. I don't want to pretend I don't care. I don't want to act busy to seem important. I don't want to withhold affection to build mystery, but I also don't want to keep feeling like the only one showing up fully, because over time, you start wondering if you need to adapt, if you need to become colder, more distant, more unpredictable, and that's scary because I don't want dating to change my character. I don't want to start playing games just because everyone else is. Dating feels rigged because effort isn't always matched. You can show up consistently and still get replaced. You can communicate clearly and still get ghosted. You can be loyal and still get cheated on. And after enough of that, it starts to feel pointless. Like, what's the reward for doing it right? Where's the payoff for emotional maturity? But maybe that's the wrong perspective. Maybe dating isn't rigged. Maybe it's filtering. Maybe the people who run from consistency are showing you they aren't built for it. Maybe the ones who disappear at the first sign of depth were never ready for it. And maybe the frustration is proof that you've outgrown surface level connections. Still, it's tiring. Tiring to reintroduce yourself, tiring to explain your intentions, tiring to build from scratch, tiring to stay optimistic when patterns repeat, because every time something doesn't work out, you question yourself. Am I too much, too intense, too available, too honest? And when those questions stack up, dating stops feeling exciting. It starts feeling like a test you didn't study for. But here's something I'm starting to realize. The right person won't make dating feel like strategy. They won't reward detachment. They won't require you to care less to keep them interested. They won't need games to stay engaged. With the right person, effort won't feel like a disadvantage. It'll feel matched. And maybe that's rare, but rare doesn't mean impossible. It just means selective. Dating feels rigged when you're trying to build something real in a culture that normalizes temporary. But I refuse to downgrade my standards just to fit in. I refuse to act uninterested just to attract interest. I refuse to pretend I don't want something meaningful, because I do, and I'd rather struggle finding something real than succeed at something shallow. Dating feels rigged, but maybe it's only rigged for people who want depth, because depth requires patience, it requires alignment, it requires two people who are equally ready, and that combination isn't common. So maybe it's not rigged, maybe it's just rare, and rare takes time. I won't become colder just to win. I won't play detached just to feel chosen. I'll stay intentional, even if it means slower, because the right connection won't reward games, it'll reward honesty. And when that happens, dating won't feel rigged anymore. It'll finally feel aligned. Why do you keep chasing someone who keeps showing you the same outcome? At some point, you have to pause and really ask yourself that question, not from a place of anger, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of honesty, because deep down you already know the answer. You're not chasing them because they want you. You're chasing them because you're hoping they eventually will, and that hope can be dangerous when it's built on nothing but mixed signals and empty gestures. If someone truly wanted you, you wouldn't feel confused all the time. You wouldn't be constantly questioning where you stand. You wouldn't be overanalyzing every delayed reply or short message, wondering what you did wrong. Interest doesn't hide. Effort doesn't disappear. People make time for what they care about. A lot of the time, the person you're chasing doesn't actually want a relationship with you. They want the attention. They want to feel desired. They like knowing someone is thinking about them, checking on them, choosing them. But that doesn't mean they're choosing you back. And that's a hard truth to accept, especially when you've already invested your emotions. The more you chase, the more power you give away. You start bending your boundaries. You start lowering your standards. You start accepting behavior you would never tolerate from someone you weren't emotionally attached to. And slowly, without even realizing it, you teach them that they don't have to show up for you to keep you around. Self-respect isn't about being cold or heartless. It's about knowing when to stop pouring into a cup that's never going to fill you back up. It's about recognizing that your time, your energy, and your feelings are valuable. They are not meant to be handed out to someone who only shows interest when it's convenient for them. When you stop texting first, when you stop checking to see if they viewed your story, when you stop making excuses for their lack of effort, something powerful happens. You create space for clarity, space for peace, space for someone who won't make you feel like you have to compete for basic attention. Walking away doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you finally cared about yourself enough to stop chasing someone who was never running toward you in the first place. You don't lose anything by choosing yourself. The only thing you lose is the illusion that one day they might change. Respect yourself enough to stop chasing. The right person will never need to be convinced to choose you. You ever notice how rare it is to find people who just let you be yourself? Like no judgment, no weird looks, no pretending you're too much or not enough. And they don't flinch. They don't make you feel like you need to tone it down or act a certain way just to be accepted. They just get you. And even if they don't, they still let you exist without making you feel wrong for it. And honestly, that kind of comfort is everything. Because most of us grew up feeling like we had to adjust ourselves depending on who we were around. Act smaller here, act tougher there, be the chill one, the funny one, the stable one, whatever made people like us, whatever kept the peace. But it's exhausting pretending. It's exhausting constantly checking yourself just to make sure you're acceptable. That's why people who make you feel safe without you having to explain yourself, that's rare. That's the kind of rare you don't stumble on often. People who see the parts of you you usually hide, the awkwardness, the overthinking, the random jokes, the quiet days, the loud days, and they just accept it like it's the most normal thing ever. People who make you feel like you can finally breathe, people who don't treat you like you're too much or hard to love, people who let you be real instead of perfect. And when you find someone like that, someone who feels like home instead of a performance, that's one of the best feelings in the world, because deep down, all any of us ever want is to be seen, accepted, and loved exactly as we are. Every girl needs to understand this, and I mean really understand it. If you have a man in your life who is willing to do anything for you, a man who loves you unconditionally, who shows up without being asked, who takes the extra step even when he's tired, even when he's stressed, even when life isn't going his way, that is not normal. That is rare. That is something most people spend their entire lives searching for and never find. A man like that doesn't just come around every relationship. You get that man once, maybe twice in your entire lifetime if you're lucky. And if you decide to let him go, if you push him away, if you take him for granted, you didn't just lose a relationship. You fumbled something special in ways you won't fully understand until it's gone. We're living in a generation where a lot of guys are completely fed up with love. They've been lied to, cheated on, emotionally drained, and replaced like they were nothing. So now they move different. They become colder, they become nonchalant, they stop loving the way they used to because every time they did, it cost them something, not because they wanted to hurt anyone, but because that's what the world taught them to do, just to survive. So when you find a man who still loves deeply, who still cares, who still communicates instead of shutting down, who doesn't disappear when things get hard, who doesn't make you question where you stand, you need to understand how rare that really is. Some people don't know how to handle good because they've never been shown good before. Chaos feels normal to them. Peace feels boring. Stability feels unfamiliar. So when something healthy finally shows up, they self-sabotage it, they test it, they disrespect it, they assume it's replaceable, and don't don't get it twisted. Guys do this too. But if you have a good man, don't play with that blessing. Don't think you can treat him however you want and he'll always stay. Don't think his patience is unlimited. Don't think his heart won't eventually get tired. Pull the petty shit to the side. Learn how to grow. Learn how to communicate instead of argue. Pay attention to the small things he does because those small things are how he shows his love. Be in tune with his emotions the same way he's in tune with yours. If he listens to you, if he protects your heart, if he shows effort without excuses, if he chooses you every day even when it's not easy, don't lose him thinking you'll just find another one like him. Because men like that are rare as fuck. And once they're gone, they don't come back the same. So be good to bro, because honestly, he deserves it. Losing the person who is part of your daily routine is a different kind of pain. Not just losing them emotionally, but losing the version of life that existed with them in it. Every morning felt automatic. Wake up, grab your phone, text her good morning without even thinking about it. Sometimes you'd FaceTime right after. Sometimes you'd meet her at school, walk together, laugh about nothing, complain about everything. It wasn't just love. It was habit. It was comfort. It was routine. And when someone is woven into your day like that, when they're built into the structure of your life for months, losing them doesn't just hurt, it disrupts everything. Especially when that person was your best friend. The one you called whenever something went wrong. The one you didn't hesitate to reach out to. The moment a problem entered your mind, you already knew who you were calling. Advice, reassurance, ideas, they were your first option every time, and now you still reach for your phone out of instinct, only to remember you can't call them anymore. You can't text them like before. You can't talk it out the way you used to. That connection is gone, and the silence feels heavier than any argument ever did. Or maybe it was your girlfriend. The person you did everything with. The movies, the random food runs, the plans you assumed would always include her. A new movie comes out, and for a split second your brain says, let's go see it together. Then reality hits. You broke up, you're blocked, she's no longer accessible, not online, not in real life, not in the way she used to be. And what nobody really talks about is how your body remembers them too. Your body got used to that text tone. Every notification used to feel like it might be her. Your heart would jump without you even realizing why. Now your phone buzzes, and it's just a bill reminder or some random notification that doesn't mean anything. And you sit there staring at your screen, realizing how much changed when she was in your life, and how empty the routine feels without her. Your days don't flow the same anymore. The structure is gone. The familiarity is gone. The person who anchored so many moments is no longer there to hold them together. And maybe the hardest part of all is accepting that you have to learn how to live life alone again. Not because you want to, but because the routine you built with them no longer exists. There's a quiet kind of emptiness that doesn't feel dramatic. You're not falling apart. You're not in crisis. You just don't know why you're here. You wake up. You do what you're supposed to do. You get through the day. But underneath all of that, there's this question you don't know how to answer. What am I actually doing this for? You don't feel passionate. You don't feel called. You don't feel like anything is pulling you forward. And that scares you because everyone else seems so sure of where they're going. Having no purpose doesn't feel like sadness. It feels like drifting, like life is happening around you and you're just present for it, and no one really talks about that part. Not having a purpose doesn't mean you're failing, even though it feels like everyone else got some kind of direction you never received. Purpose isn't something people find all at once. It's not a switch that flips or a calling that suddenly appears. Most people are just moving forward with something small and calling it certainty. So when you don't feel that pull, you assume something is wrong with you. But a lack of purpose often comes from pressure to have a passion, pressure to be exceptional, pressure to turn your life into something meaningful as soon as possible. And when nothing fits, you feel empty, not because you lack value, but because you're tired of forcing meaning where it doesn't exist yet. You're not behind, you're just in a season where life hasn't revealed what it wants from you. And that's more common than anyone admits. Purpose usually doesn't appear because you thought hard enough about it. It grows out of living, out of trying things without certainty, out of getting bored, out of noticing what quietly holds your attention when no one is watching. So when you feel like you're drifting, it doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're between definitions, between who you were and who you haven't met yet. Drifting feels uncomfortable because it lacks labels. You can't explain it easily, you can't point to progress, but drifting is still movement. It's the space where you learn what doesn't fit, what doesn't excite you, what you don't want to carry forever, and that information matters. You're not failing at purpose, you're collecting data, even if it doesn't feel productive yet. It's okay if your life doesn't feel meaningful yet. Meaning isn't something you wake up with one day fully formed. Most of the time it shows up quietly, in moments you don't think are important, in things you do without an audience, in small choices that don't feel like destiny. The problem is we're taught to look for purpose as something big, a passion, a mission, a reason that explains everything. So when life feels ordinary or unclear or slow, you assume you're missing it. But meaning isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just learning how to care about something again. How to show up for one thing, one day at a time, without needing it to define your whole life. Not having purpose right now doesn't mean you never will. It just means you're still listening. Not knowing your purpose can actually protect you, because when you feel pressured to decide too early, you end up choosing something just to stop the discomfort. A path that looks good, a goal that sounds impressive, a version of purpose that belongs more to expectations than to you. And then you spend years trying to convince yourself it fits. Being unsure right now means you haven't locked yourself into the wrong story yet. It means you're giving yourself time to notice what feels honest, not just acceptable. Purpose that's chosen out of fear usually feels heavy. Purpose that grows naturally feels lighter even when it's hard. So if you're in the in-between, don't rush to label it. This pause isn't wasted time, it's you refusing to commit to a life that doesn't feel like yours. Purpose rarely starts as clarity, it starts as curiosity, a small pull towards something you don't fully understand yet, a moment where time passes a little faster than usual, a thought you keep returning to without knowing why, but because it doesn't feel big, you dismiss it. You tell yourself it doesn't count, that it's not serious enough, that it won't lead anywhere. So you wait for certainty instead of following interest, and the waiting feels like emptiness, but purpose isn't found by deciding your whole life at once. It's found by paying attention to what makes you feel slightly more alive than before. You don't need a 5-year plan. You don't need a calling. You just need one small thing that feels honest enough to try. Purpose grows from movement, not answers. Comparing your life to other people's purpose is what makes the emptiness heavier. You see people who seem sure, driven, certain, and you assume they know something you don't. But what you're seeing is confidence, not certainty. Most people choose a direction and grow into it later. They don't start with clarity. So when you compare their path to your uncertainty, you're not being fair to yourself. You're measuring your beginning against someone else's middle. Purpose isn't a race. It's not something you fall behind on. It shows up at different times for different people because it's shaped by experience, not pressure. The more you stop watching where everyone else is going, the easier it becomes to notice what's quietly calling you, and that's where purpose actually starts to form. It's okay if your purpose isn't impressive. Not everything meaningful looks big from the outside. We're taught that purpose has to be visible. A career, a mission, something people can point to and admire. So when what matters to you feels small, you dismiss it. But simple purpose still counts. Being someone who listens well, being steady when others are overwhelmed, creating small moments of calm, showing up quietly, consistently. Not all purpose is loud. Some of it lives in how you treat people, in how you carry yourself through ordinary days, in how you don't make the world heavier just by being in it. If your life feels purposeless right now, it might be because you're looking for something dramatic and missing what's already there. Purpose doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's just the way you exist without giving up on yourself. Purpose often becomes clearer after you stop demanding that it explain your whole life. When you're constantly asking, what am I meant to do? Everything feels heavy. Every choice feels permanent, every step feels like a test, but purpose doesn't need to be a full explanation. Sometimes it's just direction, not destiny. when you allow yourself to live without forcing meaning, something softens. You try things without pressure. You follow curiosity without commitment. You let yourself change your mind, and slowly patterns form, not all at once, not dramatically, but enough to show you what feels right and what doesn't. Purpose doesn't arrive when you corner it. It shows up when you give yourself permission to live without answers for a while. Having no purpose right now doesn't mean your life is empty. It means it's unfinished. You're not meant to know everything yet. You're not behind for feeling unsure. You're not wasting time just because you don't have a clear direction. Some seasons are for building, some are for resting, and some are simply for becoming. Without labels, without answers, this space you're in isn't meaningless. It's where you're learning what matters to you by noticing what doesn't. Purpose doesn't arrive as a sudden realization. It grows quietly from the way you keep going, even without certainty. So if all you can do right now is exist, try, and stay curious, that's enough. Your life isn't without purpose. It's just still writing it. You know what hurts? Loving someone you know you can't have and trying to act like it doesn't destroy you a little more every day. It's a strange kind of heartbreak because they never rejected you, they never pushed you away, they never promised you anything, but your heart attached itself anyway, quietly, slowly, until suddenly everything started to revolve around them. It's like holding your breath underwater. At first it looks peaceful, but the longer you stay, the more it starts to ache in places you can't even describe. You know you should come up for air, you know staying hurts, but for some reason you'd rather drown than let go, and you start pretending you're okay with being just friends. Pretending the little moments don't matter as much as they do. Pretending your heart doesn't drop when they talk about someone else, or when they text you back just a little too casually. The kind of pain that doesn't scream, it just sits in your chest, heavy and quiet, because you can't be mad at them. They didn't choose you, but they never asked you to choose them either, and somehow that hurts even more. You start questioning yourself. Why wasn't I enough? What do they want that I don't have? What am I missing? And the truth is, nothing. There's nothing wrong with you. They just weren't the person meant to see you the way you deserved. But still, you stay. You care. You hold on to every small moment like it means something. You choose them even when you know you shouldn't, because letting go feels impossible and loving them, even silently, still feels better than pretending you don't feel anything at all. And maybe one day it won't hurt like this. Maybe one day you'll look back and realize you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person, but for now, yeah, loving someone you can't have is its own kind of heartbreak, and it changes you in ways you don't fully understand till it's finally over. I'll be gone one day. Not in a dramatic way, not as a threat, not as a goodbye, just as a fact. One day I won't be this accessible, I won't be this available, I won't be this version of me. And sometimes I wonder, will people notice? Will they realize what I carried, what I gave, what I stayed through? Or will it only make sense when I'm not around to do it anymore? It's strange feeling invisible while you're still here. You show up, you check in, you stay consistent, you carry conversations, you give effort, you hold things together quietly, but it feels expected, like your presence is normal, like your loyalty is assumed, like your effort is just background noise. And that's when the thought creeps in. If I stopped doing this, if I pulled back, if I disappeared, would anyone feel the shift? Or do people only realize what you meant after you're no longer there to give it? Being the strong one rarely gets applauded. You're the one people vent to, the one who keeps it together, the one who doesn't break down publicly. So they assume you're fine. They assume you don't need reassurance, don't need checking in, don't need to be chosen loudly, because you've trained everyone to see you as stable. But strength can be lonely, carrying everyone else's emotions while quietly managing your own, smiling through things you never fully process. And sometimes you think, if I ever stopped being the strong one, would anyone know how to hold me? Or would they only realize what I was carrying after I put it down? There's a quiet exhaustion that comes with always being dependable. You don't cancel, you don't disappear, you don't make people question where they stand with you. You're solid. And because of that, people get comfortable. They assume you'll always answer, always show up, always understand. But no one asks how much it costs you. No one sees the days you wanted to shut down, the moments you needed someone else to take the lead. Being reliable is a beautiful trait, but when it's constant, it becomes heavy. And sometimes you think, if I ever stop carrying this role, Will they notice the weight I was holding all along? What happens when the dependable one finally pulls back? At first, nothing. People assume you're just busy, just tired, just having an off day. But when the consistency shifts, when the long paragraphs turn short, when the constant availability fades, that's when they feel it. The silence hits different when it's coming from the one who never used to go quiet. And suddenly they notice what you used to do, the way you checked in first, the way you kept things from falling apart, the way you made everything feel steady. And it's not about revenge, it's not about proving a point, it's about capacity, because even the strongest ones get tired of being unheld. And when they finally step back, it's not dramatic, it's quiet, but it changes everything. Being gone doesn't always mean physically leaving. Sometimes it means emotionally detaching. Still replying, but not overextending. Still present, but not pouring the same energy. Still there, but no longer carrying what isn't yours. That shift is subtle. You don't announce it, you don't explain it, you just stop overgiving. And the people who were used to your full capacity start to feel the difference, because now you're protecting your energy instead of offering it endlessly. You're choosing peace over being needed, and sometimes that's the real goodbye, not disappearing, just deciding you deserve to be poured into too. Being gone one day might not mean disappearing. It might mean evolving, becoming a version of yourself that not everyone gets access to anymore. The version that over-explains, that overextends, that tolerates bare minimum, gone. The version that accepts crumbs just to keep the peace, gone. Growth changes your availability. You don't respond the same. You don't tolerate the same. You don't give the same unlimited access. And some people will say you changed. They'll say you're distant, different, harder to reach. But what they really mean is you stopped being endlessly accessible. And sometimes being gone is just becoming too self-aware to stay in spaces that don't value you. The right people won't lose you when you grow. They won't complain that you changed. They'll adjust with you, because real connection isn't built on convenience. It's built on understanding. When you stop overgiving, the right ones won't call you distant. They'll ask if you're okay. When you set boundaries, the right ones won't feel attacked. They'll respect them. When you evolve, the right ones won't feel threatened. They'll evolve too. Growth doesn't push away what's aligned. It only exposes what was comfortable. And if one day you're gone because you chose peace over pressure, the people meant for you won't lose access. They'll meet you at your new level. One day being gone might just mean I finally chose myself, not selfishly, not dramatically, fully choosing peace over pressure, fully choosing growth over familiarity, fully choosing reciprocity over exhaustion, because for a long time I chose understanding, I chose patience, I chose staying, even when it drained me. But one day I'll choose alignment, and that might look like distance to people who benefited from my overgiving. It might look like silence to people who only checked in when I carried things. But to me, it'll feel like relief, because being gone isn't always about leaving others. Sometimes it's about finally not leaving yourself. I'll be gone one day, but not in a tragic way, in a transformative way. I'll be gone from the spaces that drained me, gone from the roles that confined me, gone from the version of me that overgave just to be appreciated. And the people who only valued what I provided, they'll call it distance. The people who only noticed when I carried things, they'll call it change. But the ones who truly saw me, they'll understand. Because being gone isn't disappearing, it's evolution. It's choosing peace over performance, reciprocity over exhaustion, alignment over attachment. One day I'll be gone. And it won't be because I faded. It'll be because I finally grew into a version of myself that refuses to stay where I'm not valued. And that's not a loss. That's a rebirth. The reason why most relationships don't work is because we leave as soon as things get hard. The moment arguments start happening, the moment communication feels off, the moment it doesn't feel easy anymore, we start telling ourselves, maybe this person isn't for me. Maybe you're in that phase where you and your partner can't stop arguing. Every little thing turns into a problem. Every conversation feels tense, and instead of asking, how do we fix this? You start thinking, why is this even happening? Or maybe both of your lives are just busy right now. Work, school, stress, responsibilities. You barely have time for yourselves, let alone for each other. And instead of seeing that as a rough season, you start seeing it as a sign that the relationship is failing. But the truth is, hardship showing up in a relationship isn't a sign that you should walk away. It's not proof that love isn't there. That's just not what love actually is. You know, when you truly love someone, there are going to be uncomfortable conversations, conversations about boundaries, about things that hurt, about habits that need to change, about things you don't like and things they don't like either. You're going to hear things that don't feel good to hear, and so will they. Love isn't avoiding those moments. Love is being willing to sit in them. Love is choosing to understand instead of running away. Not always going to be sunshine and happiness. Hopefully most of the time it is, but there will be dips, moments where you both feel misunderstood, moments where you question everything, moments where it feels easier to leave than to stay and try. But love is what you do in those moments. Love is choosing to fight for each other, not against each other. Love is getting through the rainstorm together instead of leaving the moment it starts pouring, because real love isn't about never struggling. It's about believing that the struggle isn't stronger than what you have. And if you can make it through the hard parts, if you can keep choosing each other even when it's uncomfortable, that's when you realize love was never about perfection. It was about commitment. Sometimes I don't question if I love people. I question if I'm loved the same way back. Not liked, not wanted when it's convenient. Actually loved. The kind of love that chooses you even when it's inconvenient. Because attention is easy to get. Replies are easy. Compliments are easy. Late night I miss you texts are easy. But consistency is rare. And sometimes I sit there wondering, do they love me? Or do they just like how I make them feel? I show up fully, I remember details, I check in, I move intentionally. So when effort feels uneven, it doesn't make me angry. It makes me question everything. Am I asking for too much, or am I just asking the wrong person? You can be surrounded by people and still feel unloved, because love isn't about volume. It's about depth. It's about feeling chosen without begging, feeling secure without overthinking, feeling valued without performing. And when you don't feel that, you start shrinking. Sometimes the scariest thought isn't, what if they leave? It's, what if they're here but they don't love me deeply? Because half love is confusing. It keeps you around. It keeps you hopeful, but it never fully reassures you. And that's exhausting. I think a lot of us don't need more love. We need clearer love. Love that says what it means. Love that acts how it speaks. Love that doesn't leave room for constant doubt, because if I have to guess, it doesn't feel safe. And maybe the real shift isn't asking, am I loved? So I do okay. Maybe it's asking, do I feel loved? Because love can exist, but if you don't feel it consistently, it won't heal you. It'll just confuse you. I don't want intense love. I don't want dramatic love. I want steady love. The kind that doesn't disappear when things get heavy. The kind that doesn't go quiet when reassurance is needed. The kind that doesn't make me earn my place. If I'm loved, I shouldn't have to decode it. I shouldn't have to overanalyze it. I shouldn't have to convince myself of it. Love shouldn't feel like a debate. It should feel like certainty. So am I loved? Maybe the better question is, am I staying in spaces where I consistently feel valued? Because real love doesn't make you question your worth. It reinforces it, and if I ever have to constantly wonder whether I'm loved, that might be my answer. Unrequited love is a quiet kind of pain, the kind that doesn't make noise. It just sits with you. It's loving someone who laughs with you, but never looks at you the way you look at them. They're comfortable around you. They trust you. They tell you things. And every time they talk about someone else, you smile, while something inside you cracks just a little more. You learn how to swallow words before they escape, compliments you never say, feelings you never confess, because deep down you already know the answer, so you love them quietly. You notice everything about them, their habits, their moods, the small details nobody else pays attention to, knowing full well you'll never live in their memory the way they live in yours. Somehow you convince yourself it's okay, that being close to them, even like this, is better than being without them at all. You give without expecting. You care without being chosen. You love without being loved back. And that hurts in ways you can't explain. But unrequited love teaches you something too. It shows you how deep your heart really is, how much you're capable of feeling, even when nothing is returned. Just don't disappear inside someone who can't meet you where you are, because one day someone will, and they'll give back everything you once gave away in silence. The hardest part about unrequited love isn't just that they don't feel the same, it's that they're close enough to keep the hope alive. They don't reject you outright, they don't shut the door, they just exist in your life. They text you, they lean on you, they laugh with you, and every small moment feels like maybe you're not imagining it. So you hold on. You tell yourself you're being patient. That timing is the issue, that one day they'll see what you feel so clearly, but deep down, you know you're waiting for something they never promised. And that's why it's so hard to leave, because unrequited love doesn't feel like rejection. It feels like unfinished business. You don't walk away angry, you walk away confused. You wonder if you should have said more, if you should have been quieter, if you waited too long, or tried too hard, and instead of letting go, you stay emotionally tethered, not because you're weak, but because your heart hasn't been given a clean ending, so it keeps hoping, keeps replaying moments, keeps searching for signs that maybe you still matter to them in that way, and that hope is what keeps the pain alive. You begin to wonder why you're always the one feeling more, why you're always the one waiting, why love seems so easy for others but feels just out of reach for you. You start shrinking your needs, telling yourself you don't want much anyway, convincing yourself that loving quietly is enough, but it's not, because caring without being chosen slowly teaches your heart that it should settle for less. You catch yourself doing things just to stay close, being extra understanding, always available, always forgiving. Not because you're weak, but because you're afraid that asking for more will push them away completely. So you accept crumbs and call it connection, and the longer this goes on, the more invisible you start to feel, not just to them, but to yourself. You forget what it feels like to be desired, to be someone's first choice, to be loved out loud, and that's the quiet danger of unrequited love. It doesn't just hurt you, it slowly teaches you to disappear. There's a reason unrequited love is so hard to walk away from. Not just love, it's anticipation. You live in the space of almost chosen, almost wanted, almost enough. Your brain starts clinging to small moments. A long conversation, a shared laugh, a look that might mean something, and those moments keep you hooked, because when love isn't returned, your mind fills in the gaps with possibility. You imagine what could be instead of facing what is, and every time you think about letting go, you feel like you're giving up on a future that was never actually promised. So you stay hopeful, you stay available, you stay emotionally invested, not because it feels good, but because walking away feels like loss, even though nothing was ever yours. That's the trap. Unrequited love keeps you chasing closure from someone who doesn't know they're holding it, and the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to separate love from longing. You don't just miss them, you miss the version of yourself that believed it might work. At some point you feel it, the imbalance. You realize you're giving more than you're receiving, and then emotionally, mentally, quietly, you're investing energy into someone who isn't investing back. You plan around them, you think about them, you hold space for them, and they just live their life. That's when it starts to hurt differently. Not sharp pain, but exhaustion. You're tired of wondering, tired of hoping, tired of pretending you're okay with crumbs. You notice how much of yourself is tied up in someone who doesn't even know how deeply you care. And for the first time, you ask yourself a hard question: if nothing changes, and how long can I keep doing this? Because loving someone in silence means you never get reassurance, never get clarity, never get chosen, and slowly, it teaches your heart that effort doesn't lead to safety. That love means waiting, that closeness means sacrifice, and that's not fair to you. Love isn't supposed to drain you, it isn't supposed to make you feel invisible, it isn't supposed to cost you your sense of worth. worth, and realizing that is the beginning of letting go, even if your heart isn't ready yet. Letting go doesn't feel empowering at first. It feels wrong. It feels like you're giving up on someone you care about, like you're betraying something that meant a lot to you, even if it was never returned. You start questioning yourself. Am I being selfish? Am I overreacting? Should I just keep loving them quietly like before? Because walking away doesn't just mean losing them. It means losing the hope you've been holding on to. And hope is hard to release. You've built routines around them, emotions around them, a future that only existed in your head but still felt real. So choosing yourself feels like cruelty at first, like you're the one causing the pain, but staying was hurting you too. Just slower, just quieter. And that's the part people don't talk about. Sometimes self-respect feels like grief. Sometimes growth feels like loss. Sometimes choosing yourself feels worse than continuing to wait. But guilt doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you cared deeply. And caring deeply doesn't obligate you to keep hurting yourself in silence. After you finally choose yourself, something unexpected happens. It feels empty, not peaceful, not freeing, just quiet in a way that's uncomfortable. You're no longer waiting for their message, no longer replaying conversations, no longer building your day around the possibility of them. And at first, that absence hurts more than the waiting did, because unrequited love filled space. It gave your emotions somewhere to go. It gave your heart something to hold on to, even if it was hurting you. Though when it's gone, you don't immediately feel relief. You feel loss. You miss the closeness. You miss the routine. You even miss the hope, as painful as it was. And that makes you question your decision. You wonder if you left too early, if you should have tried harder, if loneliness is worse than longing. But this part matters, because this emptiness isn't failure, it's withdrawal. Your heart is unlearning a pattern, and unlearning always feels uncomfortable before it feels right. You didn't lose love, you made room for it, even if nothing has filled that space yet. One day after the emptiness settles, something shifts. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just quietly. You start noticing how much lighter you feel without carrying love alone. You realize how much energy you used to spend hoping, waiting, adjusting, shrinking, all for someone who never met you where you stood. And for the first time, you don't miss them. You miss the idea of being chosen. That's an important difference, because now you know what it feels like to give deeply, and you also know what it costs when nothing comes back. So when love shows up again one day, it feels different. It doesn't make you question yourself. It doesn't leave you guessing. It doesn't ask you to love in silence. It meets you halfway. You don't have to hide how much you care. You don't have to settle for almost. You don't have to convince yourself that crumbs are enough. And that's when you understand something fully. Unrequited love wasn't wasted. It taught you the depth of your heart. It proved you're capable of loving purely, selflessly, fully. But it was never meant to be your ending, because love isn't meant to be endured alone. It's meant to be shared. And one day, someone will choose you as openly as you choose them. No silence, no guessing, no imbalance, just love. She made me feel loved, not in a loud way, not in a dramatic way, in a steady way. She checked in, she listened, she remembered the small things, and the crazy part? I didn't know what to do with it. Because when you're used to chaos, consistency feels unfamiliar. When you're used to chasing, being chosen feels suspicious. She wasn't confusing, she wasn't distant, she wasn't playing games, she was just there. And for some reason, that scared me more than anything. Healthy love feels calm, and when you're used to chaos, calm can feel boring. There were no mixed signals, no guessing games, no hot and cold energy. She didn't make me question where I stood, and that was new. I was used to intensity, late-night arguments, emotional highs and lows, passion that felt like a roller coaster. With her, it was steady, and instead of relaxing into it, I started looking for something wrong. Because when you've been conditioned to associate love with anxiety, peace feels unfamiliar. You mistake stability for a lack of spark, consistency for predictability, security for missing something. But the truth, nothing was missing. I just didn't know how to receive love that didn't hurt first. Sometimes we don't sabotage love because we don't care. We sabotage it because we don't feel worthy of it. She showed up consistently, she communicated clearly, she didn't make me chase, and instead of feeling grateful, I felt exposed, because when someone loves you properly, they see you, not just the confident version, not just the charming version, the insecure parts too, the guarded parts, the parts that still haven't healed. And when you don't fully love yourself, being loved deeply feels uncomfortable. You start thinking, what if she realizes I'm not as solid as I seem? What if she expects more than I can give? What if I mess this up? So you create distance first, you act unsure, you slow down, you convince yourself the timing isn't right, not because she wasn't enough, but because you didn't feel like you were. I told myself it wasn't the right time, that I needed to focus on myself, that I wasn't in the right headspace, that something felt off, but if I'm being honest, nothing was off. I was just scared of being responsible for something real. Scared of being consistent, scared of not being able to hide behind confusion anymore. Because when someone loves you right, there's no chaos to blame, no mixed signals to point at, no drama to distract you. It's just clarity, and clarity means accountability. I couldn't say she didn't show up, she did. I couldn't say she wasn't serious, she was. So the only thing left to question was myself, and that's harder than walking away. You don't always realize what you had while you have it. Sometimes you realize it in the silence after, when the good morning texts stop, when the consistency disappears, when the calm you once questioned is suddenly gone. And that's when it hits. She wasn't boring, she was safe, she wasn't too available, she was intentional. She wasn't lacking spark, she just wasn't chaos. I confused stability with something missing because I was addicted to intensity. And now that it's quiet, I see it clearly. She wasn't asking for too much. She was offering exactly what I claimed I wanted, and the hardest part is realizing she didn't leave because she didn't care. She left because I hesitated. Growth doesn't always happen while you're in something good. Sometimes it happens after you lose it, after the silence, after the distance, after you sit alone with no one to blame but yourself. That's when reflection hits differently. You replay conversations, moments you brushed off, times she asked for reassurance and you gave her half answers, not because you didn't care, but because you weren't mature enough yet to handle something healthy. And the painful part, you finally become the version of yourself that she needed, clearer, more emotionally aware, more ready, but she's not there anymore. And that's the lesson. Sometimes the right person meets you at the wrong version of yourself, and losing them is what forces you to grow. Now the question is different. Do I reach back out, or do I let her have the peace I couldn't give her before because missing someone isn't the same as being ready for them? Regret can feel like growth, loneliness can feel like clarity, but are you actually different, or do you just miss how she made you feel? That's the part nobody talks about. It's easy to want someone back when you finally understand their value. It's harder to admit you might still not be the version they deserve. Reaching out isn't about easing your guilt. It's about being certain you won't repeat the same pattern. Because if she loved you right once, she deserves someone who can love her right back. And if that's finally you, then show up differently. If it's not, let her be loved properly by someone who was ready the first time. Being ready isn't about having your life perfect. It's about emotional responsibility. It's about being able to communicate without shutting down, being consistent without feeling trapped, being vulnerable without running when it gets real. I thought being ready meant having money right, career right, timing right, but she didn't need perfection. She needed presence. She needed reassurance without having to beg for it. She needed clarity without having to decode it. She needed someone who didn't confuse peace with boredom. And the truth, I wasn't emotionally disciplined enough. I liked being loved, but I wasn't ready to love back at the same level. And that's the difference. Being ready means you don't just enjoy the love, you reciprocate it fully. Was losing her a mistake, or was it a lesson I had to learn the hard way? At first it felt like a mistake, like I let something rare slip through my hands, like I fumbled the one person who actually showed up right. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized something. If if I wasn't ready, I would have hurt her eventually. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but through inconsistency, through hesitation, through emotional immaturity, and she didn't deserve that. Sometimes the loss isn't punishment, it's preparation. Preparation to become the version of yourself who doesn't run from healthy love, who doesn't confuse peace with boredom, who doesn't sabotage stability. Maybe she wasn't meant to stay forever. Maybe she was meant to show me what real love looks like, so I'd stop settling for less and stop being less. And that doesn't erase the regret, but it gives it meaning. Will she ever know how much she meant to me? Probably not in the way she deserved, because when she was loving me out loud, I was loving her quietly. When she was certain, I was unsure. When she was present, I was half in. And now that I finally understand her value, it's in hindsight. But here's what I do know. She raised my standard, not just for what I want, but for who I need to be. She showed me that love doesn't have to be chaotic to be real, that consistency isn't boring, that reassurance isn't weakness, that stability is rare, and maybe she'll never know how much she changed me. Maybe she'll never know that losing her is what forced me to grow. But one day, when I love someone the right way, fully, clearly, consistently, a part of that will be because of her, because she loved me right, even when I wasn't ready, and that's something I'll always respect. You act like watching porn, feeding into lust, and constantly chasing that quick release isn't that big of a deal. Like, it's harmless. Like, it's something everyone does, so it can't really be affecting you that much. But the truth is, it slowly puts you in a cycle you don't even realize you're stuck in until it already has a grip on you. It becomes a dopamine loop. You feel stressed, bored, lonely, or uncomfortable, so you look for something that gives you instant relief. And it works for a moment. Your brain gets that hit. You feel calm, satisfied, distracted, but then it fades. And instead of facing what you were avoiding in the first place, you go right back to chasing that same feeling again, over and over. The problem isn't just the habit itself, it's what it replaces. When your brain gets used to easy pleasure, hard things start to feel unbearable. Discipline feels heavier, motivation feels weaker, the goals you used to care about don't excite you the same way. You start putting off the things that actually build your life because they don't give you that immediate reward. You stop chasing the things that truly make you happy, real progress, real connection, purpose, growth. You tell yourself you'll get serious tomorrow, you'll lock in next week, you'll change eventually, but that cycle keeps you comfortable enough to stay stuck. And here's the part people don't like to talk about. Lust in excess usually isn't about desire. It's about emptiness. It's about trying to fill something inside of you that feels hollow. A lack of intimacy, a lack of direction, a lack of fulfillment. And intimacy doesn't always come from something sexual. It can come from faith, from deep friendships, from family, from working towards something bigger than yourself. Every craving is information. When you feel that pull, it's a signal. Something in your life needs attention. Something needs healing. And the more you numb that signal with instant gratification, the longer you delay becoming who you're supposed to be. This isn't about shame. This isn't about pretending urges don't exist. It's about awareness and control. It's about choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort, because comfort can quietly ruin your life if you let it. I'm saying this because I've been there, I've lived in that cycle, and breaking out of it doesn't magically make life easy, but it makes it real again. You start feeling hunger for progress, you start feeling pride and discipline, you start enjoying the process of becoming better instead of escaping from yourself. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be honest. Honest about what's holding you back, honest about what you're avoiding, and brave enough to sit with discomfort long enough to grow through it. The things that truly change your life are rarely comfortable, but they are always worth it. Why does fitting in feel like a full-time job? Like, you gotta work twice as hard just to be seen as average. If you don't have the face card, the perfect body, the clothes everybody else wears, the confidence they were just born with, you don't get treated the same. You get pushed aside, overlooked, judged before you even open your mouth, and the worst part, it makes you start believing something is wrong with you instead of the world around you. Growing up, I always felt like the odd one out. I didn't look like the kids who got attention. I didn't have the money or the style. I didn't have the effortlessly cool aura that everyone else seemed to have. I was just me. And apparently me was never enough for anybody. All I wanted was to fit in. Not to be popular, not to be the center of attention, just to be accepted, just to have a friend group that saw me instead of seeing what I lacked, but instead I got judged for everything. How I looked, how I talked, what I wore, what I didn't have, things I couldn't even control. It's crazy how people will look at you for 2 seconds and decide your whole worth off those 2 seconds. And it hurts, because deep down, all I ever wanted was for someone to see me for who I actually am. Not for the face, not for the body, not for the clothes, but for my heart, my loyalty, my intentions, my personality. I'm tired of feeling like I have to meet some criteria just to be treated like a human. Tired of feeling like I need to change myself just to be allowed in the room. One day I hope the world stops judging people by the outside. One day I hope just being me is finally enough. But until then, I'm learning to stop chasing acceptance from people who never cared to understand me in the first place. Because not fitting into their world doesn't mean I don't belong in my own. You're the punching bag in the friend group, the one they always pick on for no reason, the one who takes every joke, every insult, every comment, and somehow you're expected to just laugh it off. No matter what you do, it's a lose-lose. If you're loud, they tell you to shut up. If you're quiet, they clown you for being antisocial. You could sit there and say nothing, and they'd still find a way to turn you into the joke. They comment on your body, your voice, the way you exist. Too big, too skinny, too awkward, too quiet, too much. It's always something. And what hurts the most is when they say, relax, it's just jokes. But here's the truth. Anything done over and over stops being funny. Eventually, it just starts to hurt. You know it hurts because you've thought about cutting them off. You've replayed it in your head, but you don't do it because being the punching bag with friends feels safer than being alone without them. That's the part nobody talks about. How lonely it feels to choose disrespect just so you don't have to sit by yourself. But real friends don't need one person to constantly take all the hits. Talking shit is normal, yeah, but it should be spread evenly. Everyone should be able to take it. Everyone should be equal. If all the jokes land on you, that's not friendship. That's a target. So if you're the one always taking the blows, always swallowing it, always pretending you're fine, you need to hear this. Cut them off, not out of anger, out of self-respect, because happiness isn't waiting for you where you're constantly being torn down. It's waiting for you the moment you finally choose yourself. The worst pain is falling for someone who isn't ready, because it's not rejection, it's confusion. They don't push you away, but they don't pull you close enough either. You end up stuck in this space where everything feels almost real, almost mutual, almost love. They'll hold you like they mean it one day and act like they never felt a thing the next. It's like loving someone who keeps their heart behind a door they're too scared to unlock, but too scared to shut completely. And you can feel it, the way they care, the way they soften around you, the way their voice changes when they say your name. There's something there, you know it, they know it, but every time it grows, they panic, they retreat, they shut down, they build walls around feelings you never asked them to confess, and it hurts more than a clean heartbreak ever could, because at least rejection gives you clarity, a yes or a no, but this gives you hope, tiny moments, small kindnesses, late night conversations that make you think you might be the exception. So you stay, you try to love them gently, carefully, without stepping on the landmines of their past. You try to be patient, you try to be safe, you try to prove you won't hurt them the way someone else did. But the truth is, no matter how good you are, you can't love someone into being ready. Readiness isn't something you can inspire. It's something they have to choose. And people who aren't ready will love you in pieces. The soft parts, the lonely parts, the parts they're comfortable giving away. But never enough to build a future with. Never enough to meet you where you stand. And that's the part that breaks you. Not losing them, but losing the version of you that believed patience would make them stay. You start questioning yourself, wondering if you weren't gentle enough, or understanding enough, or lovable enough. But you were, you just offered a full heart to someone who only knew how to give half. Sometimes timing really does ruin everything. Sometimes two people want the same thing, but one of them still needs to learn how to feel safe in their own skin before they can feel safe in your hands. And as painful as it is, you can't fix that for them. Love doesn't always mean stay, but I can't keep breaking myself open for someone who can't open up at all. I don't know who needs to hear this right now, but you have to let them go. Not because you didn't care enough, not because what you felt wasn't real, but because holding on to something that's already gone is only hurting you more. They're not coming back, and I know that's a hard pill to swallow. It's one of those truths that sits heavy in your chest because part of you is still hoping, still replaying memories, still thinking maybe one day things will go back to how they were. But the truth is, if they wanted to come back, they would have. You wouldn't be sitting here questioning everything. You wouldn't be overanalyzing every small sign. You wouldn't be waiting waiting for a text that never comes. Someone who wants to be in your life makes that clear. They don't leave you guessing, they don't disappear, and expect you to keep the door open forever. Letting go doesn't mean what you had didn't matter. It doesn't erase the memories, the connection, or the time you shared. It just means you're choosing to stop living in the past. You're choosing to stop punishing yourself by holding on to something that no longer exists. And that choice takes strength, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. I know part of you is scared. Scared that letting go means starting over. Scared that you won't feel that way about anyone else again. Scared that this was your one chance at something special. But that fear is lying to you. Life doesn't give you just one opportunity for love, connection, or happiness. It gives you many, but only if you make space for them. The sooner you let go, the sooner you heal. The sooner you stop checking their page, rereading old messages, and asking yourself what you did wrong, the sooner you start moving forward. And moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means accepting. It means allowing yourself to grow past this version of your life. Good things are going to come again, not the exact same things, not the same person, not the same situation, but something new, something healthier, something that won't leave you feeling confused, unchosen, or stuck. I promise you that. So let this be your reminder. You don't need to keep holding on to prove how much you cared. You've done enough. It's okay to release what no longer serves you. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is finally say goodbye, even when part of you still wishes they'd stay. The worst kind of pain is caring deeply and watching it backfire, not because you expect anything in return, but because caring is just who you are. You show up without being asked. You check in on people who never think to check on you. You stay up late listening to problems that were never yours to carry. You give your time, your energy, your patience, not to be praised, just because you care, and somehow that becomes the thing that hurts you. Because some people don't meet kindness with care. They get comfortable with it. They start expecting it. They stop noticing it. Your effort becomes routine. Your consistency becomes invisible until one day you don't show up the same way anymore. That's when they finally notice. That's when they ask what's wrong. But by then you're already tired. Tired of explaining your intentions. Tired of proving your heart. Tired of giving pieces of yourself to people who never stay long enough to understand what it costs you. It's not that you regret caring, you just wish having a good heart didn't hurt this much. And maybe the hardest truth is realizing that loving deeply doesn't guarantee you'll be loved the same way. But that doesn't make your softness a weakness. It just means it needs protection. Don't stop caring. Just be careful who you hand that kind of love to. When you're the one who cares deeply, you usually become not the reliable one, the one people vent to, the one people lean on, the one who always answers. You're dependable in ways people don't even notice anymore. They assume you'll be there, assume you'll understand, assume you'll forgive, so they stop asking how you are, not out of cruelty, but because consistency gets mistaken for endless capacity. You start carrying emotional weight that was never meant to be yours alone. Other people's stress, other people's problems, other people's moods, and you hold it all quietly because you don't want to be a burden the way you never see them as one. But over time, something shifts. You feel tired in a deeper way, not just physically, emotionally. You notice how rarely someone shows up for you the way you show up for them, how quickly your needs get overlooked, how easily your exhaustion goes unseen. And that's when it starts to hurt differently, because you didn't ask for much. You just wanted effort to meet effort, care to meet care, but instead you became the place people take from without realizing they're draining you. And slowly, being the strong one starts to feel like being the forgotten one. Eventually something changes, not in a dramatic way. You don't announce it, you don't make a scene, you just stop giving the same way you used to. You reply a little later, you don't over-explain anymore. You stop stretching yourself thin just to be available, and that's when people notice. Not when you were exhausted, not when you were drained, not when you were giving everything. They notice when you pull back. Suddenly they ask what's wrong. Suddenly they feel the distance. Suddenly they miss the version of you that was always there. And that part hurts because it shows you something you didn't want to see. They didn't miss you. They missed the access. They missed the comfort you provided, the effort you gave without question, the way you made things easier for them. So when you stop showing up like that, it feels personal to them. But for you, it wasn't about punishment. It was about survival. You didn't stop caring. You just stop bleeding quietly, and realizing that is both painful and freeing because it teaches you this: anyone who only notices your absence was never really paying attention to your presence. When you finally start pulling back, the hardest part isn't the silence, it's the guilt. You feel like you're doing something wrong just by protecting yourself. You second guess every boundary. You wonder if you're being cold, if you're being selfish, if you're changing. Because when you spent your life being the one who gives, rest feels like laziness, distance feels like cruelty, and saying no feels like failure. You weren't taught how to have limits. You were taught how to endure. So the moment you stop overextending, your nervous system panics. It tells you to explain yourself, to soften it, to give just a little more so no one feels uncomfortable. But here's the truth: boundaries don't feel good at first because you're used to being useful, not protected. You learned that love meant access, that care meant availability, that being needed was the same as being valued. So when you remove access, it feels like you're taking something away, but you're not. You're just finally keeping something for yourself. And that discomfort, that's not you doing something wrong. That's you breaking a pattern that was costing you more than you realized. People who care deeply often confuse love with sacrifice. They believe loving someone means giving more, trying harder, holding on longer than they should. They tell themselves, if I'm patient enough, they'll notice. If I stay kind, it'll balance out. If I keep showing up, it'll be worth it. But love was never meant to cost you your peace. Somewhere along the way, you learned that being good meant being accommodating, that being loving meant putting yourself last. So you stayed quiet about your needs. You ignored your exhaustion. You told yourself it wasn't that bad as long as everyone else was okay. But sacrifice without reciprocity doesn't make love deeper. It makes it heavier. Because when you're always the one adjusting, the relationship stops being shared. It becomes one-sided. And the scariest part is people can get used to that version of you. They don't ask if it's costing you anything. They just assume you'll keep paying the price until one day you realize love shouldn't feel like self-abandonment. Caring deeply doesn't mean giving endlessly, and loving someone should never require you to disappear in the process. There's a moment when something finally clicks. You get tired of proving that you're genuine, tired of explaining your intentions, tired of showing people your heart just so they can decide whether it deserves care. So you stop performing, you don't overextend anymore, you don't chase reassurance, you don't give more just to feel secure. And at first that feels uncomfortable because you're not used to being this guarded. You're used to leading with softness even when it costs you. But protecting your heart isn't the same as closing it. You're not becoming cold, you're becoming selective. You start noticing who respects your limits and who only liked you when you were endlessly available. You see who adjusts with you, instead of expecting you to bend every time, and that's when you realize something important. You don't need to prove your kindness. The right people will feel it without needing to take advantage of it. Protecting your heart doesn't make you less loving. It just means you're finally loving yourself too. Once you stop overgiving, you start noticing something clearly. Not everyone reacts the same way. Some people get uncomfortable, they push back, they ask why you're different now. They miss the version of you that gave without limits and never asked for anything back. But others adjust. They respect the boundary. They meet you halfway. They don't make you feel guilty for needing space or balance. And that difference matters because it shows you who valued you and who only valued what you provided. The right people don't punish you for protecting your heart. They don't withdraw when you stop overextending. They lean in. They check on you. They notice your effort because it's no longer automatic. They give without keeping score. And for the first time, caring doesn't feel draining. It feels mutual. You realize you don't have to shrink your heart to keep people around. You don't have to exhaust yourself to be worthy of love. The people meant for you won't disappear when you stop stop bleeding quietly. They'll stay because they never needed you to hurt in order to feel close. At the end of all this, you realize something important. Your softness was never the problem. Caring deeply wasn't a mistake. Being attentive wasn't wrong. Showing up wasn't foolish. The pain came from giving that level of care to people who didn't know how to hold it. Because the right people don't drain you. They don't get comfortable taking. They don't wait until you pull back to finally notice your value. They see it while you're still giving, and they give back. With the right people, your kindness doesn't become invisible. Your effort doesn't become expected. Your heart doesn't become something to manage. It becomes appreciated. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to overextend. You don't have to lose pieces of yourself just to stay connected. Your softness becomes strength because it's met with care, not entitlement. And that's when you understand the goal was never to stop caring. It was to stop pouring your heart into places that couldn't return it. So keep your softness. Just place it wisely, because in the right hands, your heart won't hurt this much. It'll finally feel safe. I don't think I've ever been someone's first choice. Not immediately. Not without hesitation. I've been liked, wanted, texted every day. But when it came down to it, there was always a pause. Let me think. I'm not sure what I want. The timing isn't right. And you start noticing a pattern. You're good enough to keep around. Good enough to talk to. Good enough to feel close to. But not good enough to be picked without doubt. And that does something to you. Because you don't want to compete. You don't want to prove yourself. You don't want to convince someone to see what's already there. You just want one person who doesn't hesitate, one person who doesn't compare you, doesn't explore other options, doesn't need to figure it out, just chooses you. And when that hasn't happened yet, the question creeps in quietly. Is there something about me that makes people unsure? When you're never the first choice, you start overperforming. You become extra understanding, extra patient, extra available. You respond faster. You give more reassurance. You try to be easier to love. Because maybe if you're perfect enough, they won't hesitate. Maybe if you don't complain, don't ask for too much, don't pressure them, they'll finally pick you confidently. So you adjust, you downplay your needs, you accept the bare minimum, you tell yourself you're just being mature. But really, you're trying to secure a spot. You're trying to prove that you're worth choosing. And the painful part is this: even when you give your best, even when you're thoughtful, loyal, consistent, they still hesitate. And that's when it hits. It was never about you not doing enough. It was about them not being sure. And no amount of overperforming can fix someone else's uncertainty. After a while, it stops feeling like coincidence. It starts feeling like proof. Proof that maybe you're missing something, that maybe there's a quality you don't have, that maybe you're just almost exciting enough, almost attractive enough, almost unforgettable. And when you sit with that long enough, it begins to chip at your confidence. You start comparing yourself to the people they did choose. What do they have that I don't? What do they do differently? Why was it easier to commit to them? And the dangerous part, you begin to rewrite yourself in your head. Maybe I'm too available, too soft, too deep, or maybe not enough of something else. So you question your personality, your timing, your worth. But here's the truth that hurts before it heals. Someone else's preference is not a measurement of your value. You can be incredible and still not be someone's first choice. Not because you're lacking, but because alignment isn't forced. And just because someone didn't see you clearly doesn't mean you weren't clear. It just means they weren't your person. At some point you get tired, not bitter, not angry, just tired. Tired of feeling like you're competing without signing up for a competition. Tired of being compared to other options. Tired of waiting for someone to decide. Tired of proving you're worth choosing. And something shifts. You stop trying to outshine anyone. You stop adjusting yourself to win. You stop playing it cool just to stay in the running. Because love isn't supposed to feel like auditions. You shouldn't have to outperform someone to be valued. You shouldn't have to worry about whether you're the best option available. You either align or you don't. And once you realize that, you stop competing. You don't fight for a spot. You don't beg to be prioritized. You don't argue your value. You just observe. If someone's unsure, that's your answer. Not because you're not enough, but because you refuse to be an option. And the moment you stop competing, you stop feeling small because you remember something important. You're not here to be the best choice in a lineup. You're here to be the only choice for the right person. The moment you refuse to compete, your standards rise automatically. You stop accepting, let's see where this goes. You stop entertaining mixed signals. You stop tolerating being someone's backup plan. Because if someone has to compare you, they're not aligned with you. It's that simple. You don't need to be better than anyone else. You don't need to win. You don't need to outperform. You just need someone who sees you and doesn't hesitate. And once you decide you're no longer an option, you start moving differently. You don't over-explain. You don't overgive. You don't overstay. If someone's energy feels unsure, you don't chase clarity, you step back, not to play games, not to test them, but because you value yourself enough to not beg for certainty. And here's the truth. The right person won't need alternatives. They won't weigh you against other options. They won't keep you around while exploring. They'll know. And when you finally believe you deserve that kind of clarity, you stop asking, why am I never the first choice? Because you realize you were just giving your energy to people who weren't capable of choosing fully. Being someone's second option was never your identity. It was a season, a pattern you tolerated, a dynamic you accepted, a lesson you hadn't learned yet, but it was never who you are. You weren't born to compete for attention. You weren't designed to be compared. You weren't meant to sit around waiting for someone to decide if you're enough. That was just a chapter, and chapters end. What you thought was rejection was actually redirection. Because imagine being fully chosen by someone who had to debate it. Imagine building something with someone who once hesitated. That foundation would always feel shaky. So maybe not being first protected you from being second in someone's heart. Maybe every time someone paused, it was life removing you from something that wasn't certain. You weren't overlooked, you were misaligned. And misalignment isn't failure, it's filtering. You're not destined to be the second option. You were just learning what it feels like, so you'd never accept it again. Everything changes when you stop identifying as the almost. You stop saying, this always happens to me. You stop expecting to be overlooked. Stop bracing for hesitation. Stop assuming you'll be compared. Because when you carry the identity of being second, you unconsciously accept second place behavior. You tolerate inconsistency. You excuse uncertainty. You stay longer than you should. But the moment you decide that's not who you are, your tolerance drops. You don't romanticize mixed signals. You don't wait around for someone to decide. You don't attach yourself to potential. You start moving like someone who expects clarity, and that energy is different. You ask direct questions. You communicate directly. You walk away directly, not because you're cold, because you're done being confused. You're not almost. You're not maybe. You're not will see. You're either fully chosen or you're unavailable. And once you internalize that, the pattern breaks because you no longer accept roles that don't fit you. Being someone's first choice starts with being confident enough to walk away. Because if you're afraid to lose them, you'll accept almost. You'll accept, I'm not ready. You'll accept, I need time. You'll accept being kept around while they figure it out. Not because you're weak, but because you don't want to lose the connection. But here's the shift. The moment you realize you're okay walking away, you stop settling for hesitation. You stop clinging to potential. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop staying where you feel unsure. And that energy changes everything. You don't threaten to leave. You don't play games. You just won't stay where you're not certain. And when someone feels that, they either step up or they step out. Both are clarity, because being someone's first choice isn't about demanding it. It's about being willing to lose anything that doesn't offer it. And once you're strong enough to walk away from confusion, you stop ending up in it. The right person won't make you question your position. You won't have to decode their text. You won't have to wonder where you stand. You won't have to compete with silence. When someone is sure about you, It shows in consistency, in effort, in how they talk about you, in how they prioritize you. There's no gray area, and that's what you've been missing. Not love, not attraction, not chemistry, clarity. Because every time you felt like you weren't the first choice, it wasn't because you lacked something, it was because the situation lacked certainty. The right connection won't feel like a tryout. It won't feel like you're waiting for results. It won't feel like you're one option among many. It will feel stable, secure, intentional. And when you experience that, you'll realize something important. You were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong people. So why was I never the first choice? The truth, because I was entertaining people who weren't capable of choosing fully. It was never about my worth, never about me lacking something. Never about me being second best. It was about alignment. I was trying to be first in rooms where I was only an option. And once I stopped accepting that role, everything changed. I don't compete anymore. I don't overperform. I don't wait to be picked. If someone hesitates, I step back. If someone compares, I remove myself. If someone isn't sure, I let them find certainty somewhere else. Because I finally understand something. The right person won't struggle to choose me. They won't need alternatives. They won't need time to decide if I'm enough. They won't treat me like a possibility. They'll treat me like a decision. And until that shows up, I'm not missing out. I'm filtering. So I'm done asking, why am I never the first choice? Now the question is simpler. If I'm not your first choice, why are you still an option for me? And that's the shift. No one really talks about how long guys are willing to wait for the one girl they truly want. Months go by, sometimes even years. And all it takes is one sentence she said one time, maybe one day. I'm just not ready right now. I need time. And he holds on to those words like they're a promise, like they're proof that if he just waits long enough, things will eventually work out. So he waits quietly, he waits patiently, he waits while pretending he's okay even when he's not. Because when a guy sees you in his future, when he's certain about you, when his heart already chose you, waiting feels easier than letting go. He tells himself she just needs time. She's healing. She'll come back when she's ready. And sometimes I don't even know if that kind of waiting is beautiful or if it's self-destructive, because love like that is rare. A man who's willing to pause his own feelings, put his heart on hold, and stay loyal to the idea of you, even when he doesn't know if you'll ever choose him, that's not weakness. That's commitment. So if you have a man like that, a man who's willing to wait for you while you figure things out, you can't take that lightly. Handle what you need to handle, heal what you need to heal, take the time you need, but don't keep him hanging if you already know you're not coming back, because the worst thing you can do is let someone wait on hope when all that's waiting for them is disappointment. A lot of men won't walk away. They'll sit there holding on by a thread, telling themselves one more month, one more sign, one more chance, and they'll wait. Not because they're desperate, but because they genuinely care. So if you can love him again, do it fully. And if you can't, tell him. Don't make him wait just to hurt him, just to crush him, just to break a heart that was only trying to love you right. I shouldn't have texted her again. I knew at the moment I hit send, that feeling like you already know how it's gonna go, but you do it anyway. Not because you're confused, but because a part of you is still hoping it'll be different this time. So I sent it, simple message. Nothing crazy, but deep down, it wasn't just a text, it was me giving the situation one more chance, and I already knew how that usually ends. At first I told myself it was harmless, just a message, just checking in, just seeing what would happen, but it wasn't just that, because when you text someone like that, after everything that already happened, you're not just reaching out, you're reopening something you already struggled to close, and I knew that, but I still did it. Because there's always that small voice in your head that says, maybe this time it'll be different. The worst part is waiting after you send it. Watching your phone, checking if they read it, trying to act like you don't care, when you clearly do. Because now it's not just about the message anymore. It's about what their response will tell you. Do they still care? Do they ignore you? Do they respond like nothing happened? And no matter what happens, it never feels how you hoped it would. When she replied, it didn't feel the same, not even close. The energy was different, shorter, colder, like I was someone from her past, not someone she still had a connection with. And that's when it hit me. I didn't just text her again. I reminded myself why it ended. because sometimes you don't need closure. You already had it. You just didn't accept it the first time, so you go back, not to fix anything, but to feel something again, even if that feeling ends up hurting you. And that's exactly what happened. That one message brought everything back. The memories, the feelings, the version of her I thought I still had, just to show me that version doesn't exist anymore. For a second I felt like I reset my progress, like all the distance I created, all the clarity I built got undone by one text. And that's frustrating because you know better. But feelings don't always follow what you know. But after sitting with it, I realized something. That message didn't set me back. It confirmed everything I was trying to accept. It showed me clearly there's nothing left there. Not in the way I wanted, and sometimes you need that. Not because you didn't already know, but because seeing it one more time makes it real in a different way. It removes the what if, it removes the doubt, it replaces hope with clarity. So yeah, I shouldn't have texted her again, but I'm not mad that I did, because now I don't wonder anymore. Now I don't think maybe it could have been different. I saw it, I felt it, and I understand it. Some things don't need another chance. They already showed you everything the first time, and next time I won't send that message because I won't need to.